Chapter 836. It was just a short moment, and this strange feeling suddenly disappeared without a trace. Jun Moxie lowered his head without batting an eyelid, but he quickly replayed the whole process in his mind. The passers-by, under his super memory, were replayed one by one in his mind, and compared to the passers-by on the road, he filtered them one by one. It didn't take long, and the furthest person who walked was only 100 zhang away. And, although there were many people just now, the total number was less than 1,000. With this kind of population density, it could be considered as huge. But under the detection of Jun Moxie's amazing divine sense, these people appeared clearly. After a round of detection, Jun Moxie locked on to 7 people. Only these 7 people. These 7 people had just entered the range of 100 zhang that his divine sense could detect. After a round of elimination, Jun Moxie finally turned around lightly and slowly walked back again. In front of him, a young man in black was walking forward at a moderate speed. His right leg seemed to be slightly lame, and his face was expressionless. His eyes were cloudy, and his eyelids were swollen. His gaze was drooping, looking at his feet, and his footsteps were weak, as if he was too weak to stand up to the wind. But Jun Moxie instinctively felt that there was something wrong with this person, because Jun Moxie faintly felt a trace of evil. This kind of evil feeling was very strange, but there was also a trace of inexplicably familiar feeling. And there was a kind of strange feeling that made even Jun Moxie a little afraid. If this person was an expert, then this person had definitely reached a profound realm where his divine sense was completely restrained and had returned to its original state. This kind of realm, even from the Holy Emperor, Jun Moxie had not felt it before. Jun Moxie's divine sense told him that the direction this person was heading towards was the weakest point of the divine sense net formed by the experts of the 3 Holy Lands. As his footsteps deviated from the direction, this feeling also became more and more obvious. The divine sense of the experts of the 3 Holy Lands had enveloped everyone in this city, but they had not swept past this person. This was because every time his divine sense probed, this person would avoid it in advance. It was very obvious that this person had also released his own divine sense to probe the surroundings. Furthermore, he had determined the direction and position of his movement based on his own conclusion. The most bizarre thing was that the 3 Holy Lands clearly had several Holy Emperors standing guard here, but none of them had discovered him. Even the current Jun Moxie wasn't capable of such an ability. If not for that flash of inspiration, even Jun Moxie would not have been able to detect this person's spiritual sense. This person's movements might seem lazy and unremarkable, but Jun Moxie's keen senses told him that every single pore on this person's body was in the most relaxed state. His current walking posture was the most effortless and relaxed method. Regardless of whether it was their movements or movements, they seemed simple and ordinary, but in Jun Moxie's eyes, they actually faintly conformed to some kind of profound principle. Looking at the back of this black-robed person, the corners of Jun Moxie's mouth suddenly drew back, revealing a trace of a mysterious smile. It can't be him, right? Just when Jun Dashao had a flash of inspiration and vaguely understood the identity of this mysterious person, the black-robed person suddenly stopped and slowly turned around to face Jun Moxie. His eyes seemed to reveal a strange smile as he said slowly, "Kid, you've been following this young master all the way here. Could it be that you want to treat me to a drink?" Jun Moxie was slightly taken aback. His heart moved and he said, "Why not? Meeting you is fate. What's the point of treating you to a drink? I'll treat you to a drink, but I didn't bring any silver. Help me pay first, and I'll pay you later. You want to take advantage of your brother Jun? You're wrong. But if I treat you to a drink, it's still possible." Fate indeed. What a coincidence. The black-robed person shrugged and said, "I also didn't bring any silver." Then, he looked at Jun Moxie in a strange manner. "I don't know if I can drink wine without money." Jun Moxie mimicked him and shrugged. "Why don't we give it a try? Perhaps we can drink it." Interesting. The black-robed person chuckled and looked at Jun Moxie calmly. "Give it a try? let's give it a try. Since no one brought any silver, and you asked me to treat you to a drink, then I'll be the host for this meal. Please. June Moxie said generously, gesturing with his hand. So even if you don't have silver, you can still be the host. The ways of the world have really changed. The black-robed person shook his head and said somewhat ruefully. The two of them walked together, leisurely walking forward. Tongwan Hall was right in front. Jun Dashao, on the other hand, was revisiting this place. Although the two of them were basically walking shoulder to shoulder, walking side by side, looking calm and harmonious on the surface, every movement of the two of them was a strange kind of retreat. When Jun Moxie took a step forward, the black-robed person just happened to lift his own foot after Jun Moxie lifted his foot, walking in the same direction. This black-robed person's position was to the right of Jun Moxie, but with every step, Jun Moxie's right shoulder would move back a little. His foot was moving forward, but his shoulder was moving back. This posture was undoubtedly very strange. It was as if there was some invisible thread pulling at him from behind, but he insisted on walking forward. But the black-robed person's movements were the exact opposite. Every step that Jun Moxie took was before the black-robed person lifted his foot. But this black-robed person's shoulder seemed to be moving forward. Luckily, he wasn't walking very fast. Otherwise, it would be as if he was charging forward blindly. It was extremely awkward. Both of their postures were very special. What was certain was that if the two of them maintained this posture and ran at full speed, Jun Moxie would definitely twist himself into a fried dough twist. Of course, when Jun Dashao couldn't hold on any longer and fell to the ground, that black-robed person would also fall head first to the ground, kissing it passionately. But the two of them maintained this strange posture, their faces actually maintaining a cheerful expression, as if they were extremely satisfied. Every time their gazes slanted, the other party would basically move half a step forward or back before their gaze landed on their bodies. They were determined not to let the other party's gaze land on the spot that they had intended to land on. All the way to the front of Tongwan Hall, the two of them, who seemed relaxed and carefree, actually had beads of sweat on their foreheads. This was only a short distance of several dozen zhang, but the two of them had already exchanged blows no less than several hundred times. Almost every lift of a foot, every wave of a hand, every stride, and every landing of a foot was accompanied by a confrontation. One could imagine the massive consumption of mental energy. It was not inferior to an intense battle. Although Jun Moxie had maintained the advantage of taking the first step, he did not dare to shift his center of gravity, so he might not be able to gain the upper hand, let alone the advantage. This strange and inexplicable battle, to Jun Moxie, was a terrifying turn of events that he had never encountered in his previous life. Dashao had never imagined that there would actually be someone in this world who had cultivated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, whose reactions were as fast as his, and was not at a disadvantage at all. Even if he raised his eyebrows or moved his eyes, the black-robed person would immediately adopt the most appropriate countermeasure. And the position that he had immediately concealed himself was precisely the crucial point where Jun Moxie's attack would have the greatest effect. Young Master Jun couldn't help but sigh from the bottom of his heart when he realized the identity of that person. This person's reputation is indeed not empty. That was because he was well aware of how much of an advantage he had. This black-robed person, who was evenly matched with him, was heavily injured, and his strength was almost depleted. And that injury was a fatal injury that could kill a normal person 100 times over. But under such circumstances, he was still able to restrain Jun Moxie without batting an eyelid. I am really too lucky today. Although the black-robed person's walking posture seemed to be passive, in reality, he was maintaining an absolute initiative. The only slight flaw in the entire process was that Jun Dashao had taken the initiative at the beginning, but because he had fallen behind, he was unable to turn the situation around. Although he was not at a disadvantage, he seemed to be in a passive state of defense. Although the two of them were still evenly matched to the black-robed person who had always been arrogant and looked down on everyone, this was tantamount to a great humiliation. He was actually being ridden on by a young lad, who was forcefully taking the lead all the way. Every time he wanted to take a step ahead, he would always be harassed by the other party with a raise of his eyebrows. And if he were to forcefully take the lead, he would definitely have to pay a hefty price. Mother of Asterisker, I haven't come out for a few hundred years. Is the Xian cultivation of this world actually this amazing? Can a young lad actually be so abnormal? Puffed. Calling him a young lad is already an exaggeration. The person in front of me is basically a young lad who is still wet behind the ears. But this young lad, whether it was his soul, divine sense, or reaction, had actually reached a superb state where his entire body was cast as one, and he could move as he pleased. The blood prison in the sky does not move an eye. The 9 nether seas of hatred do not turn back. This body becomes heaven and earth. This exquisite heart allows one to roam freely. This was a state that he had cultivated for a few hundred years in the past to reach. If there were a few more such abnormal people in this world, how would he be able to survive? This is too crazy, isn't it? The two of them walked for a short distance of a few hundred feet, although it was just a silent confrontation, and they did not use any Xian cultivation, but the danger was enough to make one's soul tremble. If it was a real fight, and the two of them had similar cultivation, no matter who it was, they would probably have died a few hundred times. There was an old saying, listening to the clap of thunder in a silent place. The battle in the dark all along the way perfectly illustrated the true meaning of this sentence. And it was even more shocking than that. Even the sudden clap of thunder in the quietest place would not be as shocking as this silent battle. Although the battle was fierce, there was still an end to the journey. The moment the two of them entered Tongguan Hall, the battle had already begun. Both of them had their own misgivings and did not waste time finding an empty table on the first floor and sitting down, facing each other. The black-clothed man's face was still expressionless, but it was clear that the back of his clothes was already soaked. Although the battle had only lasted for a short time, it had used up a lot of mental energy. Chapter 837. As Jun Moxie swayed his waist, he waved his hand to call the waiter over and ordered a large table of dishes and wine. He didn't pay attention to the price of the dishes at all and directly ordered a large table of dishes. The waiter happily brought up a pot of fragrant tea and then ordered the kitchen to prepare quickly. The handsome young master in front of him looked like a rich man at first glance. This meal could be a big profit, but he didn't know that the young master in front of him was indeed a big old man with no money. He ordered a dish but didn't pay, and he also didn't pay when he ordered a large table of dishes. "What's your name?" The black-clothed man opposite him looked at Jun Moxie, and his eyes were still stiff, without the slightest fluctuation. Jun Moxie found that this guy could actually cultivate to the point that even the look in his eyes could change at any time, and it could be fixed at a strange level. "Do you have to ask for my name? A name is just a mark. Why bother?" Jun Moxie looked at him helplessly. "Isn't it good to have a drink? After drinking, you go your way and I go mine. Isn't that good?" "Nonsense. You use your divine sense to probe, followed behind me, and chased after me like an annoying fly. Don't tell me that you just want to have a drink with me? Do you think I'm stupid?" The black-clothed man scolded coldly. "Don't play games with me. What's your purpose? Just say it." Fine. I'll tell the truth. Why do you have to be so ostentatious and fierce?" Jun Moxie smiled in a seemingly sincere and gentle manner and made a gesture of confiding in him. The expression on his face became extremely serious. Although the black-clothed man was indifferent, he couldn't help but be interested. Langling asked, "What's the reason?" Jun Moxie said from the bottom of his heart, "Actually, the real reason is this. When I first saw you, I found that you were like a firefly in the dark, emitting a dazzling light that even the polar night couldn't cover. Although the world is vast and the affairs of the world are like tides, an outstanding man like you, no matter where you go, will always stand out and stand out. It really makes me admire you very much. Your heroic appearance makes me feel a strong sense of dizziness. It makes me feel that if I can't treat you to a drink, it is simply a heinous sin. Even if I go through 3 lifetimes of deep regret, it can't make up for the intense and painful regret in my heart. So although I don't have money, I still resolutely want to treat you to a drink. Stop. The indifferent expression on the black-clothed man's face finally changed, and the aloof expression in his eyes finally changed. He raised his head and looked at the ceiling for a long time, as if he was about to faint. Then, he shook his head twice and suddenly slammed the table. Bastard, what the F*** are you talking about? Are you even talking like a human? Haven't I made myself clear enough? What I mean is, you and I are fated. In the previous life, I was a man, and you were a woman. June Moxie said with a serious face, and his eyes were full of sincerity and certainty. You are my wife. F***CKU. Why don't he go and die? The black-clothed man's thousands of years of self-restraint disappeared in an instant, and his face became the color of the bottom of a pot. The 2 hands that were placed on the table were covered with a layer of goosebumps at a speed visible to the naked eye. His body that was as steady as a mountain also trembled slightly, as if he couldn't bear the cold of the cold night. I know you have your doubts, but it's true. June Moxie said painfully, if you still don't believe me, maybe you can go underground and ask. Although our relatives in the previous life are no longer here, their souls are still here. If you can go and ask, I believe they will definitely give you a definite answer. Then you should believe me, right? My fated person. Go and ask. You want me to kill myself first, and then go and ask. Fated person? Bullsh**T fated person. The black-clothed man who was about to collapse pressed his hands on the table and made a posture as if he was about to stand up. He gritted his teeth, and his eyes were filled with fire. Even his breathing became heavy, and he said word by word, Kid, do you think this young master is very fun? Do you know how to write the word death? As he spoke, the blue veins on his forehead suddenly popped up, and there was a hint of frenzied rage in his eyes. For more than 1,000 years, it seemed that no one had ever been able to anger him to such an extent. No matter when, he had always maintained the elegant demeanor of a young master. Even when he was being chased by the whole world, his expression didn't change, and he was aloof and free. Even when he had a narrow escape from death, he was still carefree and did whatever he wanted. But today he had met this kid, and his state of mind had been broken by just a few words. How could a state of mind be so unstable? But what he said was too disgusting. It seemed like no one could stand it, right? Look at you. I said that I don't have a purpose, and you forced me to say it. But when I really said it, you didn't believe me. June Moxie spread his hands innocently. Why are you so difficult to please? As he spoke, he squinted his eyes. Moreover, even if I really have a purpose, do you think that I will tell you just because you asked? You seem to be a little too naive. Although naive people are very cute, it is a very difficult thing to survive in this unpredictable martial world. Although your strength is not bad, it is still not enough to deal with the unpredictable martial world. You have to listen to me. June Moxie advised sincerely. The black-clothed person suddenly exhaled a long breath of air. This breath of air lasted for a full 5 minutes, and it caused June Moxie's words to come to a screeching halt. His hair and sleeves fluttered in the wind, and it was clear that he had been holding his breath to the point where an ordinary person's lung capacity couldn't handle it. Then, he slammed the table and shouted, Waiter, why aren't the dishes served yet? Do you want to go to the fields to plant now? Hurry up. Do you want to find trouble? He turned his head and didn't look at June Moxie. In fact, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself if he were to look at that repulsive pretty boy's face again. So, he would rather risk his injuries and expose his tracks to force his way out. Then, he would pull out that annoying and lively tongue of his. He felt helpless in his heart. I have lived for more than 1,000 years, but I have never seen such an outrageous person. This is really too F***ing infuriating. In my previous life, you were a woman and I was a man. You were my wife. This young master is really F***ed. Just based on the fact that this young master has lived for more than 1,000 years, it should be enough for you to reincarnate 10 times, right? The man in black rolled his eyes weakly. He suddenly felt that coming out this time was a huge mistake. If he knew that he would meet such an outrageous person after coming out, he would rather stay in the seal for another 500 years. Ho, ho, ho. Old brother. June Mo, Sia, chuckled in a voice that would make one's hair stand on end. He chuckled and said, "May I know your name?" "This, old brother." The man in black's face was full of black lines. He sucked in a breath of cold air, as if he had a toothache. He gritted his teeth and tilted his head. In a tone that sounded like he was about to cry, he said, "Do you King know how to speak human language? Even your ancestors, 8 generations, are not qualified to call this young master old brother. Do you understand?" I understand. I was just addressing you out of respect. Why are you unhappy?" Then, "Brother, how old are you this year?" June Mo, Sia, immediately changed the way he addressed him. He had a graceful demeanor. The man in black leaned his head on the table and pulled his hair with both hands. He used a weak voice to moan painfully. "Can you King shut your mouth? Will you die if you don't speak?" "Of course I cannot speak, but I don't think it is a matter of life and death. Could it be that you don't like the name old brother? Then little brother? Little brother? Old brother? Which one do you prefer? Don't look at me so fiercely. My little heart is beating so fast. Actually, this Taiwan Hall's dishes are very delicious. I came here once last time, and the taste was really delicious. Someone else treated me last time, and it was really satisfying. This time, it's my turn to treat you, but I didn't bring any money." June Moxie was beaming with joy. He smacked his lips as he reminisced about the taste, and suddenly asked, although I said I would treat you today, but you really didn't bring any money?" "Money, it means silver, copper, or something. Gold is fine too, really didn't bring any?" The black-clothed man's head, which was resting on the table, lifted up slightly. He smashed his head on the table twice and let out an extremely miserable sigh. It's fine. You don't have to be in so much pain." June Moxie patted his chest and comforted him. "Don't worry. Isn't it just a meal? Besides, forgetting to bring money isn't anything shameful. Everyone has experienced this before. I already said that I'm treating. They won't say that you're eating for free. Let me tell you, the last time I was there." The man in black raised his head with tears streaming down his face, looking at June Dashao in a daze. He actually felt a little like he was looking up at a tall mountain. He suddenly grabbed June Moxie's hands and shook them vigorously. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. "Big brother. I'll call you Big Brother, all right? In my entire life, for more than 1,300 years, I've never submitted to anyone. But today I really submit to you. Can you just shut your mouth? Can you just shut your mouth? My dear big brother, As he spoke, the black-clothed man was already howling at the top of his lungs. As he howled, he smashed his forehead against the table with a bang-bang sound. This kind of painful appearance would make anyone who saw it feel a sense of sympathy. Why did this guy look like he was being raped by hundreds of mystical beasts? Moreover, those mystical beasts should be at the same level and weight as a bear, lion, tiger, or elephant. His voice was really a little too loud, and it was still mealtime. Instantly, everyone on the first floor of Taiwan Hall turned their heads to look over, their eyes burning. What was the meaning of this? Big brother, little brother? What was going on? Why was it so loud? June Moxie laughed dryly and bowed apologetically. He explained, "My apologies, everyone. This brother of mine has epilepsy. He's usually a good, normal person. Sounds of could be heard as they were suddenly enlightened. You're the one who has epilepsy. Your King whole family has epilepsy." The man in black stood up and shouted in grief and indignation, his face filled with rage. His body trembled like a chrysanthemum in the wind. Chapter 838. I believe everyone has already guessed that this black-robed man was the 9-nether-14th young master whose name shook the entire continent, the number one madman in the world. However, the number one madman in the world for more than 1,000 years was currently crying without tears. He was extremely depressed and sullen. After the Battle of Tion Fa, this number one madman in the world who was also the true #1 expert in the world, had been bombarded by many saints and the Holy Emperor, losing more than 95% of his life. His injuries were so heavy that even he could not bear it. At the very least, it was impossible for him to regain his former glory in a short period of time. Therefore, although he was extremely unwilling, he could only hide and heal his wounds, hoping to make a comeback as soon as possible and rule the world. But in less than a month's time, a song spread crazily throughout the entire Xian continent, and it spread at an astonishing speed like a meteor. Within a few days, it had swept the entire Xian continent. Oh, I forgot to introduce him. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, this madman, lived up to his title of Young Master. He was actually a fanatical music fan. Even his own weapon was a strange instrument forged by himself after melting the 9 Serenities' frostblade. It looked like a zither, but not a zither, like a zither, but not a zither, like a flute, but not a flute. In short, it was neither. He gave this strange music a name, divine music. From this, it could be seen how much he loved music. He'd unintentionally heard half of that soul-stirring, the smiling, proud, pugilistic world song, and he'd been stunned by it to the point where he couldn't even eat or drink. But the most unbearable thing was that no matter where it was passed down, it was not the complete version. And no matter what, it was lacking in artistic conception compared to the original. This caused the 9 Nether 14th young master, who considered himself to be a master of music, to feel extremely depressed. After asking around, he finally confirmed that the original origin of this song was this chrysanthemum city. At the same time, there was also a beautiful legend. A graceful and elegant young master dressed in white robes stood at the top of the Tongwan Hall, leisurely playing the zither. He even defeated 2 venerable experts with a wave of his hand, leisurely and elegant as he left. Along the way, he sang in a carefree manner, as if he was an immortal from the heavens. In just one night, the mysterious young man in white had instantly become the idol of all the women in the world. He seemed to have become the idol of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. But at this time, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters also understood that the 3 Holy Lands had also sent out countless top-notch experts to gather in Chrysanthemum City. Although the injuries of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had gotten better, they were still quite heavy. They couldn't fight at all, but after careful consideration, they still spared no effort and came all the way here. The 3 Holy Land are going to deal with that mysterious, white-robed youth. If they really succeeded, then the smiling, proud, pugilistic world song would truly become a masterpiece. In other words, from now on, he might never be able to hear the original song ever again. To the music fanatic 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, this was something that he couldn't bear even if he were to be beheaded. So he came. Furthermore, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was confident that as long as he didn't reveal his tracks and didn't use his unique Xian technique, then even if all the ancestors of the 3 Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion lined up in front of him, they wouldn't be able to recognize him. So although he couldn't make a move, he wasn't worried about his own safety. Today was the first day he had entered Chrysanthemum City, and it hadn't even been an hour since he entered this holy land of music. As he walked towards the famous Tongwan Hall, he was also imagining in his heart how his idol, who was able to compose a song like the smiling, proud, pugilistic world, would look like, but he didn't expect that he would meet such a person before he even met his idol. A person whose strength was so high that it surprised him, so young that it surprised him, and so talkative that it made him want to fall apart. He didn't know what was wrong with his fellow, but he actually stuck to him for no reason. He tried to shake him off, but he couldn't. Then, after a while, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters finally confirmed that this fellow was not simple and had the qualifications to eat at the same table as him. Secondly, he was a little curious about this fellow. Who was he? What was his motive? Most importantly, did he recognize his true identity? Why did he take a fancy to him? Could it be that he had some flaws on him? So the 9 Nether 14th young master went with the flow and accepted this fellow's invitation. In any case, they were going to Tongwan Hall anyway, and it was on the way. With someone treating him, why not? The 14 masters didn't think that he would be countered by this young man in front of him. But the 9 serenities and 14 masters was really regretting it now. He felt that accepting this fellow's invitation was the biggest mistake he had made in the past 1,300 years. If time could turn back, even if this young master still had his Xian cultivation, he would rather be beaten up by him than eat at the same table with him. Eating at the same table was secondary. The most important thing was that he definitely wouldn't say a single word to him. This was really too torturous. He'd only asked for a name, and the things that followed almost caused him to collapse. If he'd asked for a few more things, the 9 nether 14th young master shuddered uncontrollably. Terrifying. The most terrifying thing was that he couldn't use any Xian Qi. Right now, he was in Chrysanthemum City, a place where the experts of the 3 holy lands gathered. If it was in the past, he wouldn't be afraid even if he was exposed. But now that his strength had not recovered, he didn't dare to reveal himself. Don't look at how the people of the 3 holy lands hated their enemies to the core. But if they had to choose between annihilating their enemies or destroying themselves, they would definitely choose him. Most of the strongest experts here who were above the martial saint level were old acquaintances who would not rest until he was dead. He believed that as long as he revealed even the slightest bit of his aura, they would immediately swarm over like locusts devouring the 5 valleys and gnaw at him until not a single bone was left. With his current abilities, not to mention winning the battle, even escaping would be a problem. But if he wanted to get rid of this mortal fly in front of him without using his Xian Qi, with his current strength, it was no different from daydreaming. So the 9 serenities and 14 masters was in for a tragedy. And it was a great tragedy. Since he was born, he had never encountered such a great tragedy in the 9 nether realm and the Xian continent. At this moment, the 9 serenities and 14 masters felt a strong sense of defeat, like a dragon trapped in a shoal or a tiger out of a plane. Even when the table was filled with dishes, this number 1 madman in the world still hadn't walked out of his sullen mood. He looked at Jun Moxie with a gaze that looked like he wanted to eat him up. Please, 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 please don't be polite. Jun Moxie treated his guest politely. If one were to evaluate Jun Moxie from the perspective of a hospitable host, he would definitely receive 10 points. But his next sentence made the 9 serenities and 14 masters immediately have the urge to flip the table. Since I didn't bring any money, I'll just dine and dash-y. If I don't eat, it'll be a waste. If I eat, it'll be a waste. If I'm fast, I'll get it. If I'm slow, I won't get it. The 9 serenities and 14 masters held his chopsticks and drank a mouthful of wine. He almost choked and looked at Jun Moxie helplessly. This young master is very curious. Can you be any more shameless? Don't talk nonsense. How is this young master shameless? This young master is kind enough to treat you to a meal, but you're slandering me. You're too difficult to get along with. However, since you've asked, this young master is magnanimous. I can still give you a few pointers. There's no limit to shamelessness. Shamelessness is a broad road to heaven. It's a great knowledge that's easy to learn but difficult to master. It's worth spending a lifetime to explore, to study, and to seek knowledge. We must persevere in our efforts, persevere in our struggles, persevere in our research, and tirelessly learn. The realm of shamelessness. We must constantly strive to reach new heights. Of course, this young master was just speaking in passing. How could this young master be shameless? Jun Moxie spoke in a cadence as if he was composing a poem. Sigh, there's no need to continue. I've already seen the highest realm of this knowledge from you. I believe that your achievements in this field are unprecedented and unprecedented. 9 serenities and 14 masters sighed painfully. He grabbed the wine pot, raised his head, and gulped down a few mouthfuls. His face had an expression of there's nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart. Apart from drinking, he didn't have the mood to pick up any of the dishes on the table. He had no appetite. Even if he forced himself to eat, it would be like chewing wax. He might as well not eat at all. Jun Moxie snickered in his heart. However, His divine sense was paying close attention to every movement of the person in front of him, and he was verifying it with his own understanding. He had already recognized that the person in front of him was the insufferably arrogant 9 serenities and 14 masters from that day. Moreover, he could also see that 9 serenities and 14 masters' injuries had obviously not healed. Otherwise, why would Jun Moxie dare to be so presumptuous in front of him? This was a real lunatic. If he still had some of his strength left, he could definitely turn Jun Moxie into a meat patty with just one slap. Although Jun Dashao would never belittle himself, he still acknowledged the astonishing strength of 9 serenities and 14 masters. However, he didn't have to worry about that now. Naturally, Jun Moxie wouldn't reveal his true identity. He kept rambling and talking eloquently, but he actually had an ulterior motive. Otherwise, with Jun Moxie's personality, how could he do something that would leave a great hidden danger just because he was greedy for a moment of pleasure? However, after this interaction, Jun Moxie realized that this 9 serenities and 14 masters didn't seem to be as cruel as the rumors said. 9 serenities and 14 masters didn't put on airs, nor did he have any demeanor to speak of. In fact, this was a realm that Jun Moxie had been pursuing. This was also the reason why he talked so much nonsense. Because he was referencing, he was comprehending every movement and expression that 9 serenities and 14 masters carved represented his own achievements. And this achievement was also confirming Jun Moxie's realm step by step, guiding his comprehension. It was a process for people to struggle step by step from poverty to success. It was the same when one didn't have a high status. However, once one succeeded, no matter how calm one was, he would also get carried away for a while. This was human nature. There was nothing wrong with it. Therefore, those people began to pursue the so-called temperament, demeanor, and all the other external things that could reveal the so-called inner qualities and foundation. Whether it was being detached from worldly affairs, indifferent to worldly affairs, or being domineering, it was all a kind of disguise. The so-called aristocratic temperament was even more so. After deliberately pursuing it, even if one seemed to have it, one would lose one's true self. Only by going one step further in this realm and reaching the true peak would one begin to recognize what one wanted. And people in this realm often face the world with their true temperament. They would cry if they wanted to cry, and laugh if they wanted to. There was no disguise at all. This was returning to one's true self in life. It was similar to returning to one's true self in martial arts. However, this kind of true self returning to one's true self was the true, transcendent realm. Only the 9 serenities and 14 masters was the true self, the best interpretation of nature. If this realm was completely integrated with the returning to one's true self in martial arts, then one would be a true expert. However, such an outstanding person was extremely rare. In the entire planet, there might not even be one person who could reach this realm in thousands of years. This was the true realm, a realm that even Jun Dashao himself had not reached. From what Jun Dashao knew, there were only 2 people who had this kind of temperament. One was the 9 Nether First Young Master. The first young master had already reached a higher level than nature, so it was needless to say that he had returned to one's true self. And the other person was the 9 serenities and 14 masters before him. Although the 9 serenities and 14 masters was far from the 9 Nether First Young Master, he had indeed reached this realm. Jun Moxie wanted to see how far he had reached with this realm. Could it truly be integrated with one's own Shin skills? And how far was he from such a realm? Was it within his reach, or was it far from it? Ever since he had heard about the 9 Nether Young Masters' deeds, Jun Moxie had a vague understanding in his heart, because whether it was praise or criticism, when it came to the 9 Nether Young Masters, no matter who it was, the basic evaluation was the same. Whether they were crazy or crazy, these people were living their truest selves. Because of this, Jun Moxie suddenly thought of something. Could this be a unique cultivation technique? So after he had this understanding, he specially went to the Hongjun Pagoda's database and flipped through it. At the end, when he reached the highest realm, Jun Moxie came to a conclusion that left him tongue-tied. This was really a realm. This realm was called the true self. If even the true self was gone, abandoned, lost, what was the point of talking about cultivating to become a celestial? What was the point of talking about breaking through the void and achieving the great Tao? Therefore, there was another term in Taoist techniques, and that was origin. And the 9 nether young masters that Jun Dashao had truly come into contact with, other than the 9 nether first young master, who he might not have a chance to meet again, was only the 9 serenities and 14 masters. So, Jun Moxie had tried so many ways to provoke the 9 serenities and 14 masters as negative emotions. He was making use of the 9 serenities and 14 masters' performance to comprehend his own origin. Now, as the 9 serenities and 14 masters' emotions became more and more uncontrollable, Jun Moxie's comprehension also increased. In fact, a breakthrough was imminent. The origin of the true self. So that's how it is. Chapter 839. Speaking of this, Jun Moxie had to thank the 3 Holy Lands. If it wasn't for the martial saints from the 3 Holy Lands joining hands to injure 9 serenities and 14 masters, and the fact that there were so many martial saints from the 3 Holy Lands in Chrysanthemum City, preventing this fellow from acting rashly, how would 9 serenities and 14 masters be sullenly enduring his anger here? If it wasn't for today's coincidental enlightenment, if Jun Moxie wanted to understand this realm, who knew how much more effort it would take, the origin of true self wasn't something that could be done as one pleased. Because no matter how carefree one was, there was a prerequisite: absolute strength. Only when one had enough strength could they do as they pleased. They didn't need to care about anyone's opinion. But the origin of true self was like a newborn baby. Even if it was facing a tiger that could eat it at any time, it would still struggle and cry for milk when it was hungry. But it wouldn't feel fear. This was the true instinct of a human being. And when this instinct was magnified to be able to be like this in any field, it was truly returning to its original state. Jun Moxie let out a long sigh in his heart. So this was the truth. No wonder there were so few people who succeeded in this world. The reason was actually this. In this world, all those who practiced martial arts pursued nothing more than their own strength, or the cultivation of their mental state that was able to bear the burden of great strength. But intentionally or unintentionally, they had neglected the existence of their own body. This was the so-called origin of true self. But even if one's strength was trained to the peak and one's cultivation reached the limit, so what? Even the most powerful strength had a prerequisite. Other than the cultivation of the mental state that was needed, there was also a need for a carrier that could bear the weight of these great strengths. And this carrier, without exception, was the body of a living being. Just as the Buddhists often said, the physical body of a living being was the precious raft of cultivation. And while most people pursued great strength, they would gradually diverge from this path, walking further and further. In the end, they would lose themselves and lose the original intention of the origin of true self. That kind of person would no longer be using their power. Instead, they would be using their power in the opposite direction. Just like a dangerous change often mentioned in wuxia novels, people serving in the military, if extended to here, it would be people doing manual labor. In this way, it would be putting the cart before the horse, and the position of the host and guest would be reversed. It would be strange if he could obtain any higher achievements. You're on the verge of chi deviation, yet you still want to climb to a higher peak. That's just a pipe dream. Jun Moxie seemed to have understood something. His beer had a sudden inspiration, so he didn't want to let it go. He thought hard. What would have happened if we had developed this way from the beginning? There is no doubt that the 9 serenities and 14 masters, as well as the 9 serenities faction, had been training like this since they were young. That was why they had such great achievements. However, this also had a huge drawback. That was, they would magnify themselves infinitely. Although he was confident, this kind of overconfidence also caused him to become arrogant and crazy, intentionally or unintentionally, because they had always thought that there was absolutely nothing in this world that they couldn't do. They were the strongest, omnipotent. Everyone should crawl under their feet, look up to them, and support them. And in this way, the drawback was relatively more serious. After all, not everyone could reach the achievements of the Nine Nether First Young Master. There was only one person like him since the beginning of time. Although the Nine Nether Young Masters after the Nine Nether First Young Master were all extremely talented, there was still a huge gap between them and the Nine Nether First Young Master's unparalleled and terrifying strength. When your confidence or arrogance was not enough to match your strength, there could only be one ending: tragedy. This was also why among the Nine Nether Young Masters, only the Nine Nether First Young Master had achieved limitless glory. The other Nine Nether Young Masters had all been buried in history. Actually, wasn't the Nine Nether First Young Master himself also a tragedy? He, who was extremely confident and arrogant to the extreme, was still defeated in the hands of another peerless expert in the end. Compared to the other Nine Nether Young Masters, perhaps he was just luckier and did not encounter a powerful force that could annihilate him in the Xian continent. Jun Dashao had never lacked confidence, but he wasn't overconfident like the other Nine Nether Young Masters. Confidence was a good thing, but overconfidence was definitely a bad thing. How should one find a balance in this? To allow one's self to develop without restraint, and at the same time be able to judge the situation and recognize one's own position, allowing one's strength and self to develop at the same time. While Jun Dashao was deep in thought, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters opposite him was observing him with interest. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master, who had been enraged by this brat just now, had finally recovered from his anger. He was also an intelligent person, so how could his eyesight not be good? It was only because Jun Mo Xie had spouted a bunch of nonsense that he'd lost his mind earlier, causing him to speak indiscriminately. Young Master Jun's sudden silence caused the 9 Nether 14th Young Master's eyes and ears to instantly regain clarity. Focusing his attention on the person before him, he was shocked to discover that this brat had suddenly stopped his glib-tongued tongue and had instead instantly turned into a dignified and profound look. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master felt as if the person before him had suddenly changed into a completely different person. He even felt an extremely deep and unfathomable feeling, as if he had a sense of déjà vu. This brat actually fell into a state of epiphany right now. He had just finished being talkative and angered himself to the point of puffing smoke out of his 7 orifices, and now he fell into a state of epiphany. This was something that no one could accept. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was truly and thoroughly speechless. This brat, I wonder if he can be even more outrageous? Moreover, this epiphany is a state of epiphany that can only be encountered and not sought. Even this young master wouldn't dare to say that he could have an epiphany just because he wanted to. How important was this? He was actually drinking, chatting, and being talkative here, doing this shameless thing of eating and dashing, suddenly having an epiphany. Wait a minute, this deep level of strange fluctuation, why does it seem so familiar? I must have seen it somewhere before. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters deeply furrowed his brows, and after thinking for a while, he finally remembered. This. How is this possible? Isn't this our 9 Serenities, tribes, soul shock? Is it really possible for such a fluctuation to appear in the secular world of the Xian continent? Thinking of this, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was immediately shocked. Could it be that this brat is actually a member of the 9 Serenities tribe? If that's the case, then there's a reasonable explanation for his insight into my identity. But he recognized me. Why didn't I recognize him? And why is his soul fluctuation so strange? Although it's quite similar to the 9 Serenities tribe's mantra, there are still many subtle differences. But it can be considered a different approach to achieve the same result. And I'm not dead yet. I'm still here, ready to fight again. If this brat is really a member of the Nine Serenities tribe, then how did he come out? Why didn't I feel anything at all? Could it be that the strength of the Nine Serenities tribe's descendant is really beyond my imagination? After a long time, June Moxie's fingers moved, and he finally woke up from that mysterious state. He actually stretched his body and rubbed his eyes, saying, "This sleep was really comfortable. I haven't slept so well for a long time." Does he think Epiphany is sleeping? The Nine Serenities and 14 Masters, who was originally in deep thought, instantly had black lines on their faces. The anger that they had just suppressed rose again. "Brat, you're little 15?" The Nine Serenities and 14 Masters asked with a cold face. "Little 15?" June Moxie was taken aback. "What little 15? Cut the crap. This young master has seen through your identity. How did you come here, brat?" The Nine Serenities and 14 Masters slammed the table and said angrily, "Don't you know how to respect your elders? Even if you don't care about the people of this world, you should at least show some respect to me, right? I really don't know how the adults in your family taught you. Hey, I really don't understand what you're talking about. Are you speaking in that country's language?" June Moxie shook his head in confusion, but his heart was clear. So this fellow actually thought that I was the Nine Nether 15th young master and saw through my identity? F***, I really don't know what he's thinking. Besides, even if this young master uses numbers to name himself, I'll still be the Nine Firmament First Old Master. Why would I be ranked behind you? Brat, look at this. The Nine Serenities and 14 Masters glared at him fiercely, stretched out his right hand, and placed his 5 fair and slender fingers flat on the table. Suddenly, the color of his fingers slowly changed, turning into a black shadow. It was even shrouded in a layer of floating mist. This mist was milky white. The Nine Serenities and 14 Masters smiled slightly, and his fingers instantly changed back to their original form. This process was extremely short. Other than the two of them, no one else noticed it. This strange transformation was a unique ability of the Nine Nether tribe, guaranteed to be the real deal. Speaking of which, this technique wasn't anything extraordinary. It was a secret technique used to conceal oneself in the dark world of the Nine Nether. But after coming to this world, it was basically useless. However, this unique technique of their clan had also become the best method to distinguish each other. But today, the Nine Nether 14th young master's performance was like throwing flirtatious glances at a blind person, completely wasting his time. Did you see it clearly? Are you still going to pretend in front of me? The Nine Serenities and 14 Masters looked at June Moxie with a hint of mockery. He leaned back in his chair and looked at him as if he was looking at a junior. "How did you get here? Tell me. I saw it clearly, but I'm really speechless. When I said you had epilepsy just now, I was just trying to smooth things over for you. But now I'm really suspecting." June M.O. said gloomily. "Don't tell me you really have epilepsy, brat." The Nine Serenities and 14 Masters reached out and grabbed June Moxie's wrist. June Moxie didn't dodge and let him grab him. He was laughing so hard his heart that his intestines were tied up. "Finally, I've sorted out my thoughts, and the feeling of writing has returned. There's another thing that I'm excited about. It's finally snowing here today. It's been 4 or 5 months since it's cloudy. This snow came at the right time. So, to celebrate this snow, it will continue to happen today." Chapter 840. So you really aren't. Nine Serenities and 14 Masters retracted his hand, feeling a little embarrassed. Just now, when he had sent a thread of probing air into June Moxie's meridians, he could clearly feel that the other's profound energy was pure and thick, but it was definitely not the energy unique to the Nine Serenities clan. Instead, it was another kind of profound and powerful technique that he had never seen before. The truth was very clear. He had indeed made a huge mistake. But this kid didn't hide or evade and allowed him to grasp his pulse. This was a rare show of trust. Nine Serenities and 14 Masters felt a warmth in his heart. In more than 1,000 years, this is the first person to trust me so much Although he probably doesn't know my identity, at this moment, footsteps suddenly sounded from the entrance of Tongwan Hall, where they were facing each other. Two people walked in side by side. Behind them, another 4 or 5 people entered in a line. Jun Moxie's pupils shrank slightly, but immediately returned to normal. He picked up his chopsticks and ate heartily, completely unconcerned. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' expression was calm and unruffled, as if nothing had happened. Both of them had the same thought at the same time. What a coincidence. We've run into an acquaintance again. The current Jun Moxie didn't have his original appearance, but he also wasn't that crooked mouth and slanted eyes of the Dongfang tome. As for 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, who knew what his original appearance was like, but the people who had come were really acquaintances, and they were even acquaintances of the two of them. The two people in the lead were the Holy Emperor of the Hermitage, Zhan Mubai. The other was the Holy Emperor who had led the attack on 9 Serenities and 14 Masters that day, Chao Guofeng of the Misty Mansion. As for the people who came in after them, they were the Holy Emperor, surnamed Bai, from the Misty Mansion that day, and a few others. Whether it was Jun Moxie or 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, they all had a deep impression of these people. However, neither of them showed any signs of abnormality. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had yet to recover from their heavy injuries and did not have the ability to protect themselves. Although Jun Daxiao was full of vigor and energy, his real strength was not enough. He did not have the qualification to pick a fight with Jun Daxiao. If he revealed any flaws in his expression or aura, he would be courting death. The greatest enemies of these 3 sides had actually gathered at Tongwan Hall in one morning. This could be considered as a miracle. This is Tongwan Hall, Chrysanthemum City's #1 entertainment venue. Whether it's drinking, eating, or watching songs and dances, this place could be considered a top-notch place. The one who spoke was Zhan Mubai. As the old ancestor of the Zhan family, he was naturally the landlord of Chrysanthemum City. He said with a hint of mockery, "It was here that a few days ago, the song Laughing Proudly in the Pugilistic World was released. In just a few short days, it has spread throughout the world and is well received. It really is a good place." Chao Guofeng smiled elegantly. "Brother Zhan, since you're the landlord today, we're going to have a good meal. Today, we'll just talk about the scenery and let us drink to our heart's content. How about it?" Zhan Mubai smiled. "Brother Chao, you don't have to shut my mouth first. You should know that at our level, a meal or not is not a big deal. Since I, Zhan Mubai, have invited everyone here, naturally I have something to ask of you." Before Chao Guofeng could speak, Zhan Mubai gestured with his hand. "Please, upstairs, please." Chao Guofeng stood at the door and said, "Why the trouble? Why don't we just stay here? We've been away from the mortal world for many years. Why don't we soak up some of the people here? It can also be considered as cultivation." Zhan Mubai laughed and said, "Experiencing the lives of the common people in the mortal world is indeed a form of cultivation. We'll do as Brother Chao says." As he said that, everyone randomly found a table in the hall and sat down. Although his words were pleasant to the ear, Zhan Mubai still felt slightly unhappy. Chao Guofeng was not willing to go upstairs to talk in detail with him. How could they discuss confidential matters in such a public place? This was equivalent to rejecting his request. It must be known that there were many people here, and it might be inconvenient for ordinary people to discuss matters. But with the abilities of a saint, no matter what environment they were in, it would not affect them. Using telepathy could easily solve all problems. But Chao Guofeng made use of this special environment to tell Zhan Mubai in a roundabout way, "The matter you want to talk to me about is very inconvenient, so there's no need to say it." As an old fox who had lived for hundreds of years, his wisdom was superhuman. He could guess what Zhan Mubai wanted from him, so he directly closed the door to prevent everyone from feeling awkward. Zhan Mubai understood the deeper meaning behind this. The table they chose was coincidentally next to the table where Jun Moxie and 9 Serenities and 14 Masters were sitting. Jun Moxie and 9 Serenities and 14 Masters looked at each other, and both of them revealed a somewhat bitter smile. Since you're not from my hometown, have you seen me before? If you don't know me, then this young master is even more puzzled. 9 serenities and 14 masters ask. How should I put this? Perhaps I can say that the biggest reason why I'm talking to you is because I'm as paranoid as you are. Jun Mo Xie had suppressed his cultivation to the silver Xian level. However, he didn't conceal his voice. So, he spoke like a normal person. I'm overly suspicious. So, I saw a suspicious foreigner like you suddenly appear here. So, I naturally had to interrogate you. And because you're also paranoid, you naturally think too much. Because I'm paranoid. 9 serenities and 14 masters laughed. That's right. The biggest shortcoming of humans was that they were too suspicious. Because of their suspicions, they missed out on too many things and even destroyed their own happiness, family, and career. But then again, it was also because of their suspicions and cautiousness that many people could achieve something. This is the best explanation I've heard. Let's drink to the word paranoid. What a good word. Ha! Since ancient times, whether it's emperors, generals, ministers, or peerless experts, who isn't paranoid? Brother, your paranoid theory is really to my liking. Let's drink. A hearty laughter came from the side. This old man will also drink with you. Please. The one who spoke was actually Chao Guofeng. He looked at Jun Moxie and 9 serenities and 14 masters with a sympathetic look on his face. When his eyes fell on Jun Moxie, he suddenly paused. Then his eyes flashed with extreme shock. He rubbed his eyes without anyone noticing and continued to look at Jun Moxie suspiciously. His eyes slowly turned into a look of ecstasy. Chao Guofeng's words immediately attracted the close attention of the other experts. Young Master Jun and the old man simultaneously felt 7 to 8 powerful spiritual senses wrapping around their bodies, sweeping through every pore of their bodies, some even lingering there for a long time. Jun Moxie sensitively felt that there was something wrong with Chao Guofeng's eyes. Could it be that he had discovered something? The two maintained their calm expressions, as if they were completely unaware of the interweaving divine senses. They nodded with a smile and drank the wine in one gulp. Brother Chao seems to be in a good mood. Zhang Mubai immediately understood what was going on with his divine sense. There were 2 people at the table beside them. The young man in white could be considered a talent in the eyes of the secular world. He was young, but already had a silver Xian cultivation, which was quite rare. However, he was not enough to enter the eyes of saint-level experts like them. As for the man in black opposite them, he was just an ordinary person. There was nothing special about him. Chao Guofeng's unexpected words were clearly an attempt to change the topic, leaving him with no room to turn the situation around. This made Zhang Mubai very displeased. He retracted his divine sense and decided to be straightforward. Brother Chao, I believe you know what I mean. Although I've been away from the world for a long time, I'm still a member of the Zhang family. My life's wish is for the family to be able to multiply and prosper. Right now, I only want one of my descendants to become Brother Chao's disciple. Why must Brother Chao be so persistent? If we can form a good relationship with each other, it will be beneficial for both of us. Chao Guofeng's expression changed instantly, turning from cheerful to serious. He slowly put down his wine cup and sighed. Brother Zhang, since you've made it clear, then I'll be frank with you. You should know that the Zhang family belongs to the elusive world of immortals. And our Misty Mansion can accept people from anywhere, but we must not snatch the resources of the 3 holy lands. You know the reason behind this, and so do I. Are you forcing me, or am I being too persistent? This matter involves the teachings of our ancestors. Brother Zhang's insistence is going against your original intentions, isn't it? How would I not know the reason behind this? Zhang Mubai's expression became helpless. It is not that I am being overbearing and forcing you, but this matter. I really need Brother Chao's help. That descendant of mine has the Xian Yin Death Meridian. Looking at the current situation, only the warm yang Xian Qi, created by Brother Chao's sect, can slowly heal him. Also, only by becoming Brother Chao's disciple and resolving the Xian Yin Death Meridian can he transform the Xian Yin Qi of Tian Xian into the purest warm yang Xian Qi and create an unprecedented Xian Qi. If Brother Chao is not willing to help me, the Xianin Qi in my descendant's body cannot be resolved, and he will not live past 30 years old. Chao Guofeng held his wine cup and was silent for a while before saying, Brother Jean, the noble Jean family has many branches and leaves now. There should be at least a few thousand people. As the ancestor of the Jean family, Brother Jean should be aloof and treat everyone equally. But why are you so fond of this young man? You are willing to lower yourself to ask me for help. Chapter 841. So that's how it is. Chao Guofeng suddenly understood. Ancestors like them valued their own bloodline very much, which was not something that outsiders could imagine. So, when Zhang Mubai said it, he immediately understood. But because he understood, his face showed an even more difficult expression. If he helped, he would be going against the ancestral teachings of the Misty Mansion. If he didn't help, once Zhang Mubai's bloodline ended, he would greatly offend Zhang Mubai. From now on, he would be making a strong enemy for no reason. Even if he wasn't afraid, it would still be a great trouble. What should he do? No matter how he chose, it was wrong. There were advantages to being in public. When Zhang Mubai said this, he didn't lower his voice at all and said it openly. Everyone present heard it, which made Chao Guofeng even more unable to retreat. 9 serenities and 14 masters, and Jun Moxie, who happened to hear this conversation, naturally understood. The two looked at each other, and they couldn't help but gloat. They didn't expect that Zhang Mubai, the dignified holy emperor, will be facing a crisis that would soon end his bloodline. The warm, young, mysterious art passed down by my sect. If it was practiced with the extreme opposite mysterious Yin Meridian as the foundation, it would undoubtedly be the best. Chao Guofeng said awkwardly, but it still needs to be built on the foundation of resolving it over a long period of time. In the process of resolving it, it needs to be resolved bit by bit as the mysterious Yin Meridian progresses, and after resolving it, it needs to be transformed into one's own Xian Qi using a unique mental cultivation method. As for turning all the meridians of the whole body from mysterious Yin to warm Yang, it would at least take more than 30 years. This period of time is quite long, and both the master and disciple would need to pay a lot of effort. Because our sect's mysterious art is unusual, it has always been passed down to only one person. This old man hasn't accepted a disciple for hundreds of years and is choosing a successor. If Brother Jean brought it up before today, then no matter how difficult it would be for me, I would still agree to it. But Chao Guofeng laughed helplessly and said, putting aside the teachings of our ancestors, this old man has unexpectedly discovered another strange physique. This is the disciple that all Xian cultivation masters dream of having, the free and natural physique. And this person with the free and natural physique is right in front of me. This old man can't help but be moved. Free and natural physique? Was it really the free and natural physique? Who was it? Where is it? This time, not only did Zhang Mubai notice it, but all the other experts of the Holy Emperor couldn't help but ask. Each of them revealed an extremely shocked expression, and some of them even had a fiery look in their eyes. However, they couldn't be blamed for making a fuss over nothing. Rather, the so-called free and natural physique was simply too rare. That was an innate cultivation genius. Regardless of whether it was his soul, bones, muscles, or meridians, they were all in an innate state of emptiness, completely untainted. And this kind of innate talent was something that could only be encountered by chance and not sought after. Because no matter what kind of physique this person was born with, when they were just born, they would naturally be in this special state. But after a few days, they would be tainted by the food they ingested or their breathing. This was something that no one could be exempted from. However, these Xian cultivation masters couldn't possibly wait outside every delivery room of a pregnant woman. Besides, even if they waited for 1,000,000 pregnant women, they might not even meet a single infant with a free and natural physique. So this had always been a legend. In the entire 10,000 years of the Xian continent, there had only been one. It was only because the nine nether first young master's handwritten legacy had mentioned this kind of talent that no one doubted it, and this illusory legend was passed down. If an infant with the free and natural physique really appeared in front of these experts of the Holy Emperor, these Holy Emperor experts who were still drinking with him a moment ago would probably start fighting over it. The handwritten legacy of the nine nether first young master was very clear. As long as he was nurtured according to a special method, once he grew up, he would be able to rise to the level of a saint within 50 years. A 50-year-old saint. This could no longer be described as a miracle. It was directly a miracle, a mark that belonged to God. And this achievement was only the beginning. There was no limit to this person's future achievements. In other words, as long as this miracle was given enough time to grow, he would become the number one person in the world. This was a matter that brought glory to his ancestors and brought glory to the world. The future number one expert in the world. If anyone really took in such a disciple, then he would be the master of the number one expert in the world. At that time, what would the glory of the Holy Emperor amount to? The reason why no one doubted this illusory and unsubstantiated legend was because the nine nether first young master had admitted in his handwritten legacy that he himself was a practitioner with the free and natural physique. What kind of achievements did the nine nether first young master have? That was the pinnacle of Xian cultivation that no one had ever been able to surpass. The ancestor of all Xian cultivators in the Xian continent. The ultimate existence that all Xian cultivators looked up to since the beginning of time. Everyone's breathing became heavy as they stared at Chao Guofeng like searchlights. From the looks of it, if Chao Guofeng continued to remain silent, everyone would gang up on him in the next moment. Chao Guofeng smiled bitterly, a look of sincere regret on his face. In a moment of carelessness, he had blurted it out. Right now, he really had the urge to bang his head against the wall and die. With great difficulty, he said, "Everyone here already has their own inheritors, so there's no need to fight with me for it. Furthermore, I can't really confirm it now. It's just a vague guess." Vague guess? Who is it? Whose child is it? Jean Mubai's fair face was flushed red as he asked. Others might be too embarrassed to snatch it, but he, Jean Mubai, had all his inheritors with the surname Jean, so they were naturally his descendants. His family's martial arts couldn't be considered snatching a disciple, right? If he could have a prodigy with a free and natural physique as his disciple and have that kind of supreme glory, this kind of thing, Jean Mubai could practically faint from happiness just thinking about it. If he could have this kind of glory, so what if he really had to go extinct? Far in the horizon, but close at hand. This person with the free and natural physique is him. Chao Guofeng looked at everyone's gazes that looked like they wanted to eat him up, and he felt even more helpless. He understood that if he didn't say it now, he would offend all 7 of them, and they would also keep a close watch on him, so his wish would also not be fulfilled. Helpless, he pointed with his finger. Everyone looked over, and instantly saw an extremely shocked face that had reached an extreme point. Under everyone's gaze, that face instantly collapsed, turning into a bitter gourd. This finger of Chao Guofeng's was actually pointing at Jundaxiao. The 9 serenities and 14 masters paused for a moment, then suddenly burst into laughter and spat out a mouthful of tea, splattering it all over the dumbfounded Jun Moxi's face. In an instant, Jun Moxi was flustered, and he almost wanted to beat this fellow to death with his fists. This young master is wearing a mask. What's with your spit? If my real face is exposed, then wouldn't I be dead for sure? He hurriedly wiped it carefully. This was really scary. Even if the mask didn't fall off, but if it was wrinkled, then he would be dead for sure. Luckily, this kind of movie plot didn't happen, although the situation in front of him was already very movie, but luck wouldn't accompany a person for too long, and a situation that was even worse than a movie plot appeared. The next moment, 7 to 8 men's big hands reached over at the same time, and before Jun Daxiao could react, his whole body was grabbed by those Holy Emperor's men and placed on the table. All of them widened their eyes and studied him. They looked at Jun Daxiao's body with burning eyes, as if they were looking at a top-grade beauty. Luckily, he had his clothes to cover it, or else what would have happened? Chao Guofeng was very surprised and surprised. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that when he casually came out to socialize with Zhang Mubai and casually changed the topic with a few words, he would actually discover a treasure. He was really too lucky. Among the two people who were talking, the young man in white actually had the legendary free and natural physique, which was 1 in a billion. At first glance, Chao Guofeng almost didn't dare to believe his eyes. Then, he looked carefully a few more times before he finally confirmed. It was really him. Oh my God, it's really him. At that moment, Chao Guofeng almost had a blood rush to his head. Oh heavens, oh earth, which fairy sister did such a good thing, to actually allow such a miracle to appear in front of him. Luckily, this old man didn't take in any disciples all these years, or else my lineage will always be a single disciple. Pooey. So what if I take in disciples? At most, I'll chase all the disciples I took in before out of the sect. As long as I can take in this person in front of me as my disciple, no matter how big the price is, it's all worth it. So, ever since he discovered this super genius, Chao Guofeng's brain was obviously not enough to use. His words were also very incoherent, and he was only thinking about how he could bring this person back without anyone noticing. One must know that in this world, there were many people who were jealous of the talented. Even if it was him, if he saw someone else taking in such a disciple, his heart would also feel unbalanced. But because of his absent-mindedness, he finally made a mistake. This fellow, Zhang Mubai, actually brought up the physique of his descendants. Chao Guofeng didn't even consider it and only rejected him. But in a moment of carelessness, he actually spat out the words free and natural physique. At the moment he spat it out, Chao Guofeng almost had the urge to commit suicide on the spot to thank his ancestors. What did I say just now? I actually spilled out that secret. I deserve to die. Chapter 842. Chao Guofeng was still very confident in his own lifespan. He felt that with his level 3 Holy Emperor Xian cultivation, living for another 300 years was definitely not a big problem. And with the free and natural physique, he could become a saint at 50 years old. Then, 300 years, no matter what, it would still be stronger than him, right? But looking at the entire world, how many people would dare to say that they were stronger than him? Even if he raised 5 fingers, he still had to bend down 2. But in his absent-minded state, he blurted out the words that came out of his mouth. This way, there was no longer any room for concealment. At this moment, how could he still have any apologetic feelings towards Zhang Mubai? Chao Guofeng was so depressed that he wanted to slap Zhang Mubai to death. You actually want me to take in your grandchildren of God knows how many generations as my disciple. Dream on. Is that Xian death meridians of yours that amazing? If you're willing to die, die early and reincarnate. Why aren't you dead yet? Die early and don't be a burden to others. Zhang Mubai, you damned old fool. You deserve to die 1,000 times. It's you. You've ruined so many things for me. May the heavens bless you to have no descendants. To have no descendants. Chao Guofeng really had the urge to go berserk, but he still had to maintain a good impression in front of his future disciple. He forced himself to put on a benevolent and sage-like appearance. But in his stomach, even his intestines were about to break. My heavens, it's actually true. It's really the legendary free and natural physique. A Saint Emperor screamed in shock. His tone was like a young girl in love who had suddenly seen her idol, or a Buddhist who had suddenly seen the living Gautama Buddha. The table was already clean, leaving only a lifeless Jun Dashao sitting on it. Like a plate of food, his face filled with helplessness. There were a total of 8 Saint Emperors around him. 16 piercing gazes scanned his entire body. To put it in an inappropriate way, even if a great beauty were to strip naked and stand in the crowd, she might not be able to make these 8 Saint Emperors show such focused expressions and gazes. Jun Dashao's charisma was evident. Although his clothes were still neat and tidy, Jun Xie felt as if he had been stripped naked. He couldn't help but want to cry, but no tears came out. I've been seen through by 8 old demons who have lived for who knows how many years. Why is my life so bitter? At this moment, he suddenly experienced the feeling that the 9 serenities and 14 masters had when they were furious at him, but could not do anything about it. This was real karma. It wasn't that he wouldn't report it, but it wasn't time yet. Once the time came, he would immediately report it. Moreover, it was reported in such a shocking and embarrassing manner. Help! Who would have thought that a casual meal would cause so much trouble? These were 8 holy emperors. They were all top experts who stood at the pinnacle of the world, judging him as if he was a piece of pork, and the way they looked at him was filled with naked greed. F***CK. Do they think this young master is Tripitaka's meat? Actually, these people had all seen wrongly. Jun Moxie definitely did not have the free and natural physique. Just this body alone, before the evil monarch had possessed it, was a trash body that couldn't be any more trash. It couldn't even be considered as a talent. The free and natural physique was indeed rare. Since ancient times, there was only the 9 nether first young master who had it. But these people didn't know that although Jun Moxie's physique was not the free and natural physique, it was even rarer than the free and natural physique. In fact, it was more than a level higher. Who could use the purest heaven and earth spiritual chi to cleanse their body every day? He could even do it dozens of times a day. Who could cleanse their tendons and marrow every day? Every hour. I'm being reborn again. Who would be able to cultivate using the best cultivation method in the world since ancient times? Who could use the number 1 treasure in the world, the Hongjun Pagoda, to assist them day and night? What was even more shocking was that who could possess an endless supply of primordial violet chi? That was a heaven-defying thing that even deities could only dream of. Under the nourishment of such a long period of time, Jun Moxie's body could no longer be described with the word talent. Right now, he was even more valuable than Tripitaka's meat. Jun Moxie had concealed his body's condition very well, but he didn't know if it was because his luck was too bad or he had brought this upon himself. He had unscrupulously provoked the 9 nether 14th young master, and because of this, he had comprehended the essence of the great Tao of the true self. But at the same time, because of this comprehension, his mental state was greatly different from before, even fluctuating slightly. And just as he finished his enlightenment, Zhan Mubai came in with Chao Guofeng and the rest. If it was any other holy emperor, he would have just glanced at him and ignored him as a secular genius. But the person who came was Chao Guofeng. The main focus of Chao Guofeng's cultivation was the variation of Xian Qi, and it had always been passed down to only one person. Chao Guofeng was already several hundred years old, but he had yet to find a satisfactory successor to inherit his legacy. This holy Emperor Chao was now like a hungry wolf, looking for those so-called geniuses with his green eyes. Chao Guofeng's aptitude could be considered excellent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to cultivate to the level of the holy emperor. But his physique had not reached the level of the most special Xiantian physiques. Chao Guofeng's cultivation had reached the limit of the holy emperor's level, and he believed that he wouldn't be able to make any more breakthroughs in his cultivation for the rest of his life. Compared to his master, he was still a few levels lower. This was also the greatest regret of his life. Therefore, Chao Guofeng swore that no matter what, he would find a successor with exceptional aptitude who could surpass his ancestors to pass down his sex cultivation technique. Today, he had coincidentally come to Tongguan Hall, and it was like rain after a long drought. Seeing the legendary free and natural physique, Chao Guofeng's eyes were naturally red, and his heart was boiling. Right now, Holy Emperor Chao had already made up his mind. No matter what, he had to take this disciple under his wing. Even if he had to break off relations with his old friends of hundreds of years, or even become enemies, he would not hesitate. Among the 8 holy emperors, there were at least 3 others who had the same idea as Chao Guofeng. One of them was the one who had ambushed Jun Moxie, Zhan Mubai, Holy Emperor Zhan. But today, Zhan Mubai was destined to have no chance. because he had come alone to ensure that his grandson could be taken in as a disciple by Chao Guofeng of the Misty Mansion. As long as Chao Guofeng agreed, Jean Mubai would also prepare a generous gift for the other 6. It was not only to shut their mouths, but also to ensure that his great-great-great-grandchildren would receive the best care and benefits in the Misty Mansion. But now that they had encountered such a good thing, Jean Mubai was absolutely alone. The other 7 were holy emperors, and they all belonged to the Misty Mansion. The disparity in strength was clear as day. When Jun Dashao was being groped by the 8 holy emperors, he had wanted to use the yin-yang escape to escape. But in that instant, a strange thought appeared in his mind. And it was this thought that stopped Jun Moxie from taking any further action. The words that Mei Shuyan had said previously rang in Jun Moxie's mind. In the Misty Mansion, there is a rainbow holy tree. The fruits of the rainbow holy tree are divided into 7 colors, and they are known as the rainbow holy fruits. And in the Heaven Saint Palace of the 3 Holy Lands, there's a heavenly Saint Lotus Pond, and in the pond, there's a 9-segment exquisite lotus. 1 rainbow holy fruit of each color, and when consumed together with the petals of the 9-segment exquisite lotus, it will increase one's profound qi by 500 years. Furthermore, it will allow the person who consumes it to maintain his appearance for 500 years. He will be able to maintain the appearance of the moment he consumes it. Guan Qinghan and Dugu Xiaoi, as well as his mother. This matter had always been in Jun Moxie's mind, and he had never forgotten it. But the Misty Mansion had always been extremely mysterious. Forget about stealing the rainbow holy tree. He didn't even have a clue how to enter it. Or perhaps today's matter was an opportunity? It all depended on how he would use it. But no matter what, he couldn't just block off this path. Jun Moxie anxiously pondered in his heart, temporarily forgetting the awkwardness of being watched by others. Kid, what's your name? How old are you this year? Who is your master? Who did you cultivate with? Where's your home? Who else is there in your home? You? Countless questions came out from the mouths of the 8 holy emperors at the same time. For a moment, Jun Moxie was overwhelmed, and he simply didn't know whose question he should answer first. After a series of twists and turns, he finally managed to think of a way to deal with this round of questioning. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. For his own long-term plans, this white lie of Jun Moxie's satisfied the 8 holy emperors. He was an orphan, lonely since he was young, and his master was a warrior named Yuxian. They only had each other to depend on. As for the profound question of how his physique could still maintain the free and natural physique after growing so big, Jun Moxie also gave them a puzzled look. It was said that when he was young, he grew up in a tiger's den, and he didn't know anything else. Question: have you ever eaten anything? Answer: when I was young, I saw a white stone on the mountain that suddenly broke, and there was water in it. So I drank the water, and it was said that I was in a coma for a few days before waking up. Thus, all the holy emperors came to a sudden realization. 16 bright eyes looked at Jun Moxie, and they exclaimed in unison, "No wonder! So it's the legendary spirit stone, Immortal Milk. Maybe it's the top-grade spirit stone, Immortal Milk, that's hundreds of millions of years old. If that's the case, everything could be explained." Thus, all of them looked at Jun Moxie with even more fervent gazes. This is really a miracle. The free and natural physique was originally already a legendary realm, but this young man with the free and natural physique had actually drunk something that only existed in the legends before. Spirit Stone, Immortal Milk. As long as this young man could find a master, his future achievements would simply be indescribable. The eyes of the 8 holy emperors turned green and then blue towards the original master of this genius, Yuxian. The 8 holy emperors were cursing the heavens in their hearts. What kind of rubbish standard is this? It's simply a waste of a heavenly gift. Taking in a disciple with a unique physique in the entire world. And after training him for a few years, he's actually only at the Silver Xian level. This master's incompetence has already reached a point that makes one's hair stand on end. Chapter 843. It seemed that as long as it was Jun Dashao's master, he would become the enemy of the Holy Emperor, whether it was before or now. What a tragedy. Jun Moxie looked at his table through the crowd. Sure enough, 9 serenities and 14 masters had disappeared without a trace. This guy has no sense of loyalty. Can't he see that I'm already in such a miserable state? He only cares about running away. You guys have completely messed up my plan. Jun Dashao wanted to cry, but no tears came out. It wasn't easy for him to meet the 9 nether 14th young master, and he was Jun Moxie's number 1 trump card. In the midst of their conversation, Jun Moxie had already discovered a strange phenomenon. No matter where the 9 nether 14th young master went, the heaven-earth spiritual chi in the surroundings would automatically gather around him. In other words, even if this guy did not use his martial arts, he was always in a state of healing. According to Jun Moxie's estimation, although this guy was seriously injured before, he should have recovered a lot by now. Although it was still difficult to make a move now, it should not be a big problem in a few days. With such a terrifying recovery speed, those injuries were definitely not a big problem for him. One had to know that in that battle in Tian Fa Forest, the injuries that the 9 nether 14th young master had suffered were enough to scare anyone to death. Just the position of his heart alone had been pierced through by 2 swords, and the 3rd sword had even pierced through all his internal organs. Moreover, there were countless other scars on his body. Any one of those scars on an ordinary person would have been reincarnated long ago, but this guy was still alive and kicking. He had even traveled thousands of miles to become a fanatic. Based on this guy should be able to exert a considerable amount of combat power in a few days. When that time comes, if there are enemies that I can't deal with, I can just shift the blame to someone else. Wouldn't that be great? In the past, Chu Chiwen was always the scapegoat. Now that it was someone else, wasn't it good? This was Jun Moxie's grand plan. However, this perfect plan had obviously died in the womb. At the very least, it would not be used in the short term. Even if he could escape now, it was impossible to find someone like the 9 nether 14th young master in the huge Chrysanthemum City, unless he took the initiative to look for her. His luck was simply rotten to the max looking at the 8 agitated Saint Emperors in front of him. Jun Moxie felt as if he couldn't vent his anger. All right, since you've treated the god of killing as Tripitaka's flesh, I'll give you a good surprise. Finally, the 8 holy emperors also felt that it was inappropriate to leave Jun Moxie on the table, so they took him down and sat him on a chair. The 8 of them looked at each other in dismay. Finally, I say, kid, this old man sees that your aptitude is not bad. Are you willing to accept this old man as your master? This old man is the ancestor of the Zhan family, the holy emperor of the pugilistic world. As long as you follow me, you can have whatever you want. Glory, splendor, wealth, and rank are endless. After a moment of stalemate, Zhan Mubai was the most thick-skinned. He took the initiative to speak first, wanting to gain the upper hand. He had no choice but to be anxious. The other 7 were all enemies. How could he compete with the 7 of them alone? However, this kid was still immortal. Perhaps glory, splendor, wealth, and rank could move him. At the very least, he could give a try. As long as this kid nodded his head, he would pick him up and leave. But before Zhan Mubai finished speaking, he was interrupted. What do you mean as long as I follow you? Splendor, wealth, and rank? I say, old man Zhan, why do you sound like you're looking for a concubine? How can the mundane things of the mortal world enter my eyes? Kid, don't listen to him. This old man is lecherous, shameless, and despicable. He's the first-class scoundrel. Or this old man was called the Holy Sword Scholar. My reputation is resounding. I'm full of righteousness, and my Shin cultivation is strong. The one who spoke was the Holy Emperor of the Misty Mansion. Just now, he called Zhan Mubai Brother Zhan. Now that there was a conflict of interest, his tone changed. In his mouth, Zhan Mubai became a lecherous, shameless, despicable scoundrel. This change in roles was really fast. His mentality changed rapidly, and his words did not leave any leeway. There was no other reason. It was because the aptitude of this young man in front of him had really reached a heaven-defying level. Although his current cultivation was only at the silver Xian level, the meridians in his body were exquisite and without any obstruction. This also meant that no matter what kind of Xian cultivation or level it was, there would be no bottlenecks to speak of for him. Which martial artist doesn't have any bottlenecks? Although the 8 people present were all Holy Emperor experts, their cultivation was still the accumulation of hundreds of years. And in their hundreds of years of cultivation, at least 2/3 of their long years were used to break through layers of bottlenecks. Without any bottlenecks, what kind of monster would that be? No one dared to even think about it. Although the 9 Nether First Young Master had left a letter as proof, and no one doubted its authenticity. But after all, it had been tens of thousands of years, and no one had seen it. Everyone had only treated it as the most beautiful legend. But now, the legend had come true. There was such a superhuman monster right in front of them. With this kind of heaven-defying aptitude, with just pure accumulation, he would be able to smoothly reach the level of the Holy Emperor. This kind of heaven-defying aptitude might not be unprecedented, but was the only one in the tens of thousands of years since the 9 Nether First Young Master. It could be predicted that in the future, it might not be seen again. It was definitely something that could only be encountered and not sought. The 8 old men moved at the same time, their greedy eyes locked onto Jun Moxie. When had Jun Dashao ever been timid? It was not an exaggeration to say that he was extremely daring. But today, right before his eyes, he was really trembling. He was really a little afraid. Honestly speaking, anyone would be afraid. A young lad surrounded by 8 old monsters that were hundreds of years old, filled with desire, anticipation, and greedy gazes that refused to let go. Who wouldn't be afraid? After arguing for a while, everyone was in a stalemate, but no one was willing to let go. It would be weird if such a prodigy was willing to let go. Enough! Where's the commotion? What kind of status do we have? We're already so old, and you still want to snatch a disciple for no reason? To think that you guys would do such a tasteless thing. Don't let the younger generation laugh at us. Chao Guofeng furrowed his brows and said, "Which one of you doesn't have a bunch of disciples and grand disciples? This old man is still a loner, and you guys still have the cheek to snatch with me. I believe that only this old man can focus on nurturing this child. Let him have the best development." Everyone rolled their eyes. If he had an ordinary aptitude, or even a few types of genius physiques, we wouldn't fight with you. But this is the free and natural physique. Who wouldn't be jealous? You keep saying that you want us to develop our style, but why don't you develop it yourself? Only you can focus on nurturing him? That's bullsh asterisk T. If there was such a disciple, who wouldn't focus on nurturing him? Even if they had to expel all their previous disciples, they wouldn't hesitate. Brother Chao's words are reasonable. Such a genius indeed needs to be focused on nurturing. It's just that although Brother Chao doesn't have a disciple, he has a high position in the Misty Mansion and is busy with work, unlike this old man who has nothing better to do. This old man also doesn't have a disciple worthy of inheriting my legacy. Jean Mubai smiled and said, "Brother Chao, why don't you let this little brother have him? With Brother Chao's capabilities, you'll definitely be able to find a better one in the future. That descendant of mine is actually not bad as well. He's born with the black terminal meridians and is suitable for Brother Chao's unique mental cultivation technique. What do you think?" Chao Guofeng rolled his eyes and directly interrupted, "Better? Jean Mubai, there's no need to find one. As long as you name a physique better than the free and natural physique, this old man will immediately give him to you. Not only do you want to take this child for yourself, you even want this old man to worry about that sickly great-grandson of yours. What are you thinking? Do all the good things belong to you?" Jean Mubai said embarrassedly, "Brother Chao, are you really so unreasonable? Forget it. It's fine if you don't want to take my great-grandson as a disciple. I won't force you. But now, you even want to snatch a disciple from this old man? Brother Chao, as a person, you have to be reasonable, right? You can't let this old man die without a descendant and also lose my legacy." Chao Guofeng almost fainted in a single breath. He gritted his teeth and said, Jean Mubai, to think that you can say such shameless words. How is this old man unreasonable? The physique of that great-grandson of yours is not something I can decide. That's his parents' fault. This old man is willing to accept your great-grandson as a favor, but not because it's fair. This is the real reason. Not to mention other things, there are thousands of people in your Jean family. Which one of them isn't your descendant? Today, this old man has been searching for over 700 years, and you actually say that the descendant is yours? Do you still have any shame? Who is the unreasonable one here? Let everyone here judge. If it was an ordinary person, this old man wouldn't fight for it. But this lad's physique is definitely not inferior to that monster, June Moxie. This old man will not give up on such a talent no matter what. Could it be that Brother Chow is relying on the fact that everyone here is an expert from your Misty Mansion to bully me and force me to accept him as my disciple? Jean Mubai had directly started to act shamelessly. Not only did he directly accuse the Misty illusory manner of wanting to bully someone, he even directly turned young Master June into his disciple. The speed of this change in identity was truly godly. Chao Guofeng's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that that monster, June Moxie, also has the free and natural physique? Just what kind of physique does that scoundrel, June Moxie, have? We didn't investigate it in detail previously because we didn't have the time to do so. But that brat, June Moxie, had indeed reached the second-level venerable realm before the age of 18. This is a fact that everyone can see for themselves. Brother Chow, even if he has the guidance of a famous teacher with this kind of advancement speed, what kind of physique do you think he has? Jean Mubai snorted and said, and this lad in front of us, although he is only 18 or 19 years old, he is still a piece of rough gold and unpolished jade. The only thing he lacks is the guidance of a famous teacher. If he goes through this old man's training, he might not be any weaker than June Moxie. In fact, he might even be stronger. This old man has this confidence. Who knows, he might even be the second nine nether first young master. You have this confidence, but do you think I don't? The three holy lands are fighting for power, creating such a foul atmosphere in the world. If I really give this lad to you, it will definitely be a waste. No matter what you say, there will be no room for discussion. Chao Guofeng had already made up his mind. This disciple of his, he would not let go no matter what. Chapter 844. June Moxie was already dead. No matter how good his aptitude was, it was all in the past. And this kid in front of him, in terms of aptitude, he believed that there was no one in the world who could match him. How could Chao Guofeng allow such a talent to slip away from his hands? This was the future #1 expert. Chao Guofeng, you're really going too far. Why do you have to say that a talent in my hands is a waste? Jean Mubai revealed a look of anger and humiliation. Today, no matter what, you have to give me an explanation. He had already made up his mind. He didn't care anymore. He just needed to find an opportunity to snatch the person and leave. If they were to fall out with each other, then so be it. As long as he could snatch this heaven-defying kid, everything would be worth it. At most, he would give up on Hermitage or even the entire Jean family, find a secret place to hide, and focus on training his disciple. This was related to the glory of the future. Any sacrifice was worth it. Although the other 6 people in front of him also had great intentions, Chao Guofeng was ultimately the leader of the Misty Mansion's operation this time. They might not really fight to the end. At the end of the day, the competition now was only between him and Chao Guofeng. He who strikes first has the advantage. That, old sirs, can you allow this junior to say a few words? A weak voice came from the side. It was Jun Dashao. They were arguing here, and Jun Dashao's eyes were also moving around, not stopping at all. He was thinking about how to get out of this awkward situation and even gain an advantage. Speak. Chao Guofeng and Jean Mubai spoke at the same time. They were determined to fight for a good impression in the eyes of their future disciple. My master once solemnly warned this junior that if I want to be a master, the first thing to do is to have amazing skills. Why do the two of you have to argue endlessly? Anyway, this junior is here and can't run away. I think if it's not you, then it'll be him. Since I want to be his disciple, then I naturally have to choose a stronger one. One of the two of you spar on spot. It'll be clear who's stronger and who's weaker. I think the loser will have nothing to say, right? June Moxie cowered and said with some hesitation. Hearing these words, the two of them were moved at the same time. These words were very reasonable. How could the losers have any room to compete? They couldn't help but be filled with fighting spirit. They looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's eyes. That's right, that's right. The victor is king, and the winner calls the shots. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to accept your loss. This is indeed a good way to resolve this conflict. The other 6 people jeered at the same time. They were naturally very confident in Chao Guofeng. Chao Guofeng was a level 3 holy emperor. Although Zhang Mubai was not ordinary, he was only a level 2 holy emperor. This was a rather large gap between them. Using a martial arts competition to decide who his disciple would belong to was tantamount to placing Chao Guofeng in an invincible position. Sweat broke out on Zhang Mubai's face. He gritted his teeth, and the words, "Let's fight," were stuck in his throat, but he couldn't say them. If they really fought this battle, he would definitely lose for sure, and the relationship between the 3 holy lands and Chao Guofeng's group would also be destroyed because of this. There's no need to rush this matter. Brother Chao, there's still some time before the deadline for you to return to the Misty Mansion. Why don't we use this time to see this kid's ability to accept and consider it? If this kid only has talent and doesn't have the corresponding perception, then it's a waste of time. As for who's going to take him in as a disciple, we could discuss this matter later. How about it? Zhang Mubai could be considered to be a sly old fox. With a flash of inspiration, he spoke out a reasonable argument. That's fine too. Chao Guofeng also understood that this was not a good time to fall out with Zhang Mubai. If there was no way to turn things around, then he would just take action. However, Zhang Mubai had already softened his tone. If he insisted, then he wouldn't be on his side anymore. Thus, he reluctantly agreed. But at the same time he agreed, he also thought that when Zhang Mubai returned this time, he would definitely contact the other holy emperors of the 3 holy lands to pressure him. It would be difficult for him to do anything alone. The longer this dragged on, the worse it would be for him. Turning around, he looked at the 6 saint emperors who had come with him and said solemnly, "My 6 brothers, we've all come out together and seen such a fine talent. If I'm the only one who takes advantage of this, I'll feel very apologetic. I also know that my brothers think highly of this child. How about this? If I'm fortunate enough to take this child as my disciple in the future, then other than being my successor, he'll have to treat the 6 of you like a disciple as well. In other words, not only will he be my successor, he'll also be the disciple of the 7 of us. My 6 brothers, what do you think?" His words not only occupied the dominant position, but also gave the 6 of them a huge favor. It could be said that he had done a lot of favors. Moreover, he was confident that none of the 6 of them would reject him. What a joke! This was the master of the future #1 expert in the world. Even if it was just a nominal master, it was still a great achievement and glory. Sure enough, when the 6 of them saw that the 2 of them were fighting fiercely, all of them had the intention to retreat. All of them already had the thought of, "It's none of our business, so let's just ignore it," and avoided it. At this moment, when they unexpectedly heard Chao Guofeng's explanation, they felt that the situation had taken a turn for the better, and they couldn't help being overjoyed. "Brother Chao, are you serious? What's there to be serious about? Do you really think I'm willing to share this good disciple with others?" Chao Guofeng laughed bitterly. "In this situation, if we don't join hands, this disciple will be snatched away by the 3 holy lands. This is their territory, after all. A strong dragon cannot suppress a snake in its territory. If they really succeed, then in at most 1 or 200 years, our Misty Mansion's transcendent position will be lost. Whether it's for the inheritance or the Misty Mansion, the 7 of us must escort this genius back to the Misty Mansion, although this old man still has the intention to monopolize him. No matter what, I'm still a part of the Misty Mansion. I must also do my best for the future of the Misty Mansion." He paused for a while and said, "A real man does not regret his words. Since I said that he is the common disciple of the seven of us, then from now on, there will be no change. My only request is that this disciple is this old man's successor. This old man only has this one request. I hope everyone can agree to it." When he said this, it was enough to show his sincerity. The other 6 people felt ashamed at the same time, thinking that they had indeed neglected the big picture. Although this disciple had to have the title of Chao Guofeng's successor, he was still the disciple of the 6 of them. This was much better than before. They could not help but say, "Brother Chao's request is definitely not a problem. You can rest assured, since he is the common disciple of the 7 of us. Then even if the 3 holy lands want to snatch him, we brothers are not to be trifled with." Zhang Mubai groaned inwardly. This move of Chao Guofeng's was exceptionally beautiful. In just a short while, he had gained 6 strong supporters. This increased the difficulty of his plan by several times. With such strength, even if any one of the 3 holy lands came out, they might not be able to shake him. But Zhang Mubai would not let go just because of this. The Misty Mansion was afraid that the 3 holy lands would use this disciple to suppress the Misty Mansion 100 years later. How could he not hope to use this disciple as a foundation to allow the 3 holy lands to shake off the shadow of the Misty Mansion? Free and natural physique, the physique of the 9 Nether First Young Master, the achievements of the 9 Nether First Young Master. Thinking of this, Zhang Mubai was so agitated that his chest was about to explode. No matter what, he would not let go. With the plan set, these few old men did not even bother to eat. They simply paid the money and returned to the Qin Manor. As for Jun Moxie, he was protected in the middle by the 7 holy emperors of the Misty Mansion. Like the stars surrounding the moon, they followed behind. The holy emperor opened the way, the holy emperor held the rear, and there were also the holy emperor's bodyguards on the left and right. Even a 9 Nether First Young Master from 10,000 years ago would have sighed in admiration at the level of Jun Dashao's current status and treatment. Little did he know that the 8 holy emperors, including Zhang Mubai, were also secretly observing him. The 8 experts saw that the young man was surrounded by their auras. Although he did not know what was going on, he was still composed. His movements did not show any signs of panic. Under the guidance of the 8 Saint Emperors, he calmed down and became calm and reserved. Extraordinary indeed, as expected of the free and natural physique. The 8 holy emperors' evaluation of Jun Dashao had risen by a few notches. One had to know that the aura of the 8 holy emperors, even in the Tian Fa forest, was enough to scare away all the beasts. How powerful was that? Although they did not show any malicious intent to suppress him. Under the pressure of such a majestic aura, it was not something that any ordinary person could withstand. The 8 of them returned to the Chun residence, each with their own ulterior motives. Jun Moxie, the fake super Xuanzang meat, was arranged to stay in a room in the middle of a small courtyard that the Chun family had specially prepared for the holy emperors of the Misty Mansion. And Chao Guofeng was staying next door. Holy Emperor Chao obviously could not wait to accept a disciple and pass on his skills. But seeing the faint hesitation in Jun Moxie's heart, although he forced himself to calm down, he still couldn't hide the faint trace of helplessness. Chao Guofeng couldn't help but feel a sense of tenderness in his heart. Alas, in the end, he's still a worldly traveler. He's too young and hasn't seen the world, so his confidence is slightly lacking. Seeing the Chun family's magnificence, his mentality is actually a little unstable. I have to let him get used to it first. Tomorrow, I will let the head of the Chun family and the others come over to greet me. First, to show my superior status, and second, to dispel the anxiety and fear in his heart. He is the future disciple of the 7 of us. A mere Qin family is nothing. Letting them entertain us is giving them a lot of face. After thinking for a while, he comforted Jun Dashao with a few words and chatted amiably for a while, making Jun Moxie feel as if he was bathing in the spring breeze. He even used his supreme divine power to create a special aura, helping Jun Moxie to calm his fear. When everything was over, seeing that Jun Moxie's mood was much calmer, the 7 holy emperors went back to their rooms to meditate and practice. At their level of cultivation, sleeping or not had long since become a trivial matter of no importance. Moreover, in the hearts of the 7 of them, they were definitely more excited than Jun Moxie. However, they didn't notice that after they left, a trace of cunning flashed in the eyes of this prospective disciple, as well as the brilliance of a conspiracy. This was really a heaven-sent opportunity to sow discord. If this prospective disciple of theirs suddenly died, what would happen? Jun Moxie was looking forward to it. On the surface, the 7 holy emperors went back to their own rooms to meditate, but in reality, they had already started to discuss in secret. The more they talked, the more excited they became. They had even started to discuss how to build the foundation for this precious disciple when they returned to the Misty Mansion, which kind of elixir to take first, and, according to the characteristics of the 7 people's techniques, who would be the first to teach, then who would follow up, who would strengthen, when he reached a certain stage, what kind of method would he use to improve himself. They even discussed using the heaven and earth treasure of the misty, illusory manner, the rainbow fruit, to cleanse his meridians and marrow at a certain period of time, to create an unparalleled expert in the shortest time possible. One must know that the higher the cultivation of the disciple, the earlier he finished his apprenticeship, the greater the glory. With this disciple, it would not be a problem for the Misty Mansion to completely suppress the 3 Holy Lands. Even surpassing their ancestors was not an extravagant hope. Their real goal should be to work hard to catch up to the level of the 9 Nether First Young Master. That was not something impossible. The 7 of them became more and more excited as they discussed, and each of them even came up with a grand blueprint. Thinking of the future, the 7 of them could not help but feel excited. In the pugilistic world, a talented youth who wanted to find a good master needed luck. But for a top-notch expert to find a disciple that was completely suitable to his liking, that was an even more difficult thing. Perhaps these few holy emperors did not know and could not be sure if there were people with a free and natural physique in this world. But Jun Moxie knew that the 9 Nether First Young Master was not the only one with a free and natural physique in the past 10,000 years. Just how many geniuses have been buried in this world since ancient times? No one knew. If all of them were added up, it would probably be an army of 1,000,000. How many geniuses did not have any opportunities and became farmers, merchants, or even poor to the point of death? Talent scouts were rare, but how could 1,000 steed be common? The greatest significance of the 2 was that neither could be dispensed with. Time passed quietly. There were no stars or moon in the sky, but it was already the darkest period before dawn, and at most half an hour, the sky would be bright. The true darkness before dawn, and also the darkest moment before dawn. At this moment, Chao Guofeng and the rest all felt a trace of abnormality at the same time. Although the 7 of them were only conversing in secret, their nerves were all stretched taut. That was the legendary free and natural physique. Since Jean Mubai coveted it so much, how could he be willing to suffer such a huge loss? There was no guarantee that he would not play any tricks. So while the 7 of them were conversing, they maintained their vigilance. Seeing that the night was about to pass and the dawn was about to arrive, just when everyone was about to heave a sigh of relief, something strange happened. An extremely subtle sound of the wind drifted past. Even if one listened carefully, one would only think that it was a natural sound of the wind. But in this night, the 7 of them could be said to be extremely familiar with the movements of the outside world. This seemingly natural gust of wind blew past, but it was very sudden, and it had already reached the courtyard. The movement was really fast. If it was any ordinary person, how would they be able to hide from the eyes and ears of the Holy Emperor experts? Not to mention the courtyard that was just inches away. Even if it was 100 zhang away, they would have already been detected. The cultivation of this person was definitely not below any of the 7 holy emperors. Jean Mubai. Chapter 845. Although they didn't believe that Zhang Mubai, as the Holy Emperor, would do such a despicable thing, they still had to guard against it. But now that they saw it happen, the 7 of them were enraged. Zhang Mubai, you've overestimated yourself. The 7 of them got up at the same time and rushed out of their rooms, only to see an agile black silhouette. The silhouette seemed to be carrying something in its hand, but it had already leapt out of the back window of June Moxie's room. With a flutter, the silhouette had already leapt onto the wall that was 7 to 8 feet away. It was still soundless, but all his movements were seen by the 7 of them. The silhouette was tall, and his every movement exuded an air of elegance and confidence. This was Zhang Mubai's signature move. With a loud bang, a Saint Emperor rushed out of June Moxie's room. Before he even appeared, he shouted, "Boss Chow, it's bad, he's gone." "Brother Zhang, are you really in such a hurry?" Chao Guofeng's lungs were about to explode with rage. Zhang Mubai's methods are too despicable. We agreed to have a fair competition, but you actually came to kidnap him in the middle of the night. Although he said it with a smile, his tone was filled with coldness. Obviously, the anger in his heart had reached its peak. The silhouette seemed to pause for a moment. He didn't even turn around, nor did he pay attention to Chao Guofeng's words. Seeing that his whereabouts had been exposed, he suddenly exerted strength in his legs and shot out from the wall like an arrow. This time, he leapt with all his might and didn't deliberately try to hide his traces. Because his movements were too fast, the friction between his body and the air produced a shio sound. At the same time, a faint white smoke was emitting from the side of the silhouette's body, bringing with it a faint burnt smell. The speed of his movements was so fast that the friction with the air had reached a terrifying level. Like a black meteor or like a black lightning, he flashed over the wall and disappeared without a trace. "Zhang Mubai, you're really shameless." Chao Guofeng was so angry that his whole body was trembling. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that Zhang Mubai would actually do something as shameful as kidnapping someone and escaping after his whereabouts had been discovered by them. It was simply shameless to the extreme. They had really been too careless. There was a rumor that this person did not care about his face at all. While they were interrogating, he had attacked a junior, the public enemy of the 3 holy lands, June Moxie. His actions could be said to be despicable and shameless to the extreme, but they still had to treat him with a fair attitude. They had really brought this upon themselves. With a whistle, the 7 enraged Holy Emperor chased after him at full speed. Everyone gritted their teeth and rubbed their palms. How many years had it been since they stepped into the pugilistic world? How could the 3 holy lands be this arrogant now? You even dare to rob the person recognized by our misty mansion. He even dared to snatch it in such a brazen and unbridled manner. This was simply intolerable. Uncle could tolerate it, but Aunt could not tolerate it. He could tolerate it by force, but not by lust. Mother asterisk her. If I don't beat you until 10,000 peach blossoms bloom, you won't know why the flowers are so red. The person in front of them continued to run at top speed. His speed was really as fast as a ghost, turning left and right, hoping to shake off the pursuers. But Chao Guofeng and the rest were still in hot pursuit. The person in front was still carrying a person that weighed more than 100 pounds. Although he had the advantage of escaping first, he was still unable to shake off the pursuers. Seeing that the 7 Holy Emperor were about to catch up to him, he suddenly laughed and said, "Since you can't bear to part with him, then I'll return him to you." That person suddenly stopped in his tracks. His left hand grabbed the person in his hand and raised his right palm. With a sharp whistling sound, he ruthlessly slapped the head of the person in his hand. No! Chao Guofeng's heart was about to shatter, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He could only feel his entire body turning cold, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. In Chao Guofeng's eyes, everything in front of him seemed to have become slow motion. He watched as the palms slowly descended, and with a paw sound, the head of the person in his hand was smashed like a rotten watermelon. blood and brain matter immediately flew into the dark night sky. Then, the black figure's hand loosened, and the person that was being carried fell down like a wooden stake. Then, he added a kick, and the lifeless body pounced towards Chao Guofeng. With a pu sound, it fell to the ground. There is simply no need to investigate. The entire head had been completely smashed under this palm. Even if the victim was the 9 serenities and 14 masters, he would definitely not be able to survive from such an injury. Not to mention that he was only a silver Xin youth. The 7 people who were in the midst of flying were instantly dumbstruck and almost fell from the sky. Looking at the bloody corpse on the ground, everyone simultaneously felt as if they were in a dream. They had never thought that Zhang Mubai would be so ruthless. Ah! Chao Guofeng screamed towards the sky, his voice like thunder. His eyes instantly turned red, and with a wah sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. The black figure seemed to be shocked and said with a hoarse voice, "I already said that I'll return it to you. You don't want it? Why didn't you catch it? Look, he felt his death, right? You can't blame me for this. This is really the will of the heavens. Although I can't have the person, you guys can't have it either. Let's go our separate ways, and there will be no more disputes." Chao Guofeng landed on the ground, and his body arched as he panted. His eyes fiercely stared at the black figure, and said with a hateful tone, "Zhang Mubai." The black figure was still hoarse, and said with a surprised tone, "I'm afraid that you've mistaken me for someone else, right? I'm Jun Moxie. How can I be Zhang Mubai? Jun Moxie is already dead, and you killed him with your own hands." Chao Guofeng was so angry that he felt dizzy. His body swayed twice, and he almost spat out another mouthful of blood. He used all his strength to roar, "Zhang Mubai, F***CK your grandmother." The black-clothed man was enraged and shouted, "Chao Guofeng, don't go too far." He seemed to have forgotten to conceal his voice in his anger. As soon as the words left his mouth, he immediately came to his senses and shut his mouth. However, his body flew up and spurted a mouthful of blood into the sky. He seemed to have activated some kind of acceleration secret technique and disappeared into the boundless night in the blink of an eye with an astonishing speed that left everyone dumbfounded. The 7 holy emperors' faces were all ashen. Chao Guofeng slowly walked to the corpse that had fallen down the wall, and with a tiny bit of hope, he fiddled with it for a while, and then his body swayed, and he spat out another mouthful of blood, and his body fell backwards. What hope was there? This corpse was only wearing a tight-fitting nightgown, and its head was gone. But from the size of the body, there was no doubt that it was a young man. 3 holy lands. Zhang Mubai, you and I are irreconcilable. Chao Guofeng panted, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were ferocious, as if he had gone mad. The other 6 people were also all pale, and they were so angry that they were hovering between life and death. The 7 of them were still excitedly discussing how to train this disciple of theirs, looking forward to the future glory of their disciple and the birth of the second 9 nether first young master. Who knew that in the blink of an eye, the disciple that the 7 of them had spent so much effort to groom had turned into a pile of headless meat. He couldn't be any more dead. This was the free and natural physique. The legendary free and natural physique. The 9 nether first young master's physique. The 7 of them did not say a word, and turned around, like 7 volcanoes that were about to erupt, and walked resolutely towards the small courtyard that Hermitage was staying in. All of them exuded an extremely dangerous aura. At this moment, the 7 of them had made up their minds. Even if they had to throw away their lives here, they must vent this anger. Zhang Mubai, you must pay the price. Everyone could understand Zhang Mubai's deliberately mystifying actions. The meaning behind his words was even more clear. If I can't get it, you guys can forget about getting it. Let's just go our separate ways and avoid a future crisis for the 3 holy lands. Zhang Mubai had already done something like this once. Wasn't it the same when he ambushed Jun Moxie in the Tian Fa forest? A fellow who could disregard his reputation and ambush his juniors. What kind of despicable things could he not do? It was exactly the same as what had happened this time, a different approach to achieve the same result. But Jun Moxie had already made it clear that he was going against the three holy lands. Although it was despicable of you to ambush him, the result was still understandable. But this disciple of mine is only a silver Xian now. By the time he matures, your bones, Zhan Mubai, will have already turned into ashes. What are you so worried about? Could it be that you want to kill a genius just because you discovered that he doesn't belong to the three holy lands? What kind of shameful logic is this? Furthermore, what you've killed this time is the future hope of our misty mansion. 300 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, or even a legend that could rival the Nine Nether first young master. Even if this matter were to be spread back to the misty mansion, it would still result in a fight to the death. Zhan Mubai, do you think that we won't know it's you just because you change your voice? Aren't you treating us as fools? Just based on that holy emperor level of cultivation and that despicable behavior. Looking around the world, other than you, a trashy saint emperor, who else could do such a despicable and shameless thing? Who else but you could do such despicable things? At this time, Zhan Mubai, who was hated to the core by the seven holy emperors, had finally reached an agreement with the experts from the three holy lands, Hermitage, Illusory Blood Sea, and Supreme Golden City. He was the person in charge of this mission from Hermitage. After paying a considerable price and promising many benefits, everyone finally decided to help Zhan Mubai obtain this disciple. Zhan Mubai was finally at ease. Although he had paid a great price, he still sincerely expressed his gratitude to everyone. After the decision was made, everyone returned to their own rooms. Zhan Mubai also returned to his own room to think carefully. Although he had already obtained the promise of all the experts from the three holy lands, the Misty Mansion would definitely not let go so easily. How could he handle this matter without any problems? He would probably have to plan carefully. In any case, this disciple with a free and natural physique, this old man must obtain him and will not let anyone else. Chapter 846. His voice was truly earth-shattering. It was so vulgar and unbridled. Probably everyone in Chrysanthemum City had heard it. This voice could be said to be extremely furious, and even had an extremely twisted tone of indignation, causing the words to be unclear. Zhan Mubai actually did not recognize whose voice it was, but the strength of the person who was cursing was definitely not below him. Who the hell did I offend? Is there a need to use all of his strength to curse me in the middle of the night? Is he afraid that others can't hear him? This was something he had never encountered ever since he became famous. Zhan Mubai could not help but be furious. Even if the person cursing was not inferior to him, he could not let it go easily. Just as he was about to go out to investigate, a sudden boom sounded. The wall of his courtyard had been smashed open by something, and he could not help but be shocked. When he flew out, he heard a shio sound, and a sharp sound pierced through the air. Zhan Mubai focused his eyes and saw a black robe fluttering towards him. Someone actually used a piece of clothing as a hidden weapon. What is this? Do you think you can deal with me with just a piece of clothing? This is looking down on me too much. There was no absolute in this world. No one had said that a piece of clothing could not deal with an expert like the Holy Emperor. In this world, there were always things that could not be imagined, but definitely not done. Zhan Mubai, who felt that he was being looked down upon, was enraged. He grabbed the piece of clothing in his hand, and just as he was about to say something, he felt that his hand was actually sticky. The clothing was actually covered in blood, and there was even some white fluid. Zhan Mubai looked around suspiciously, but did not discover any movement. It was as if the blood-stained black clothing had fallen from the sky. Zhan Mubai was also an intelligent person. After thinking for a while, he already understood a little. He could not help but chuckle in disdain, thinking to himself, could it be that the person who launched the sneak attack was planning to frame me? Just based on a piece of blood-stained black clothing? Trying to frame me. Zhan Mubai, you're looking down on me too much. Even if you framed me, who would dare to arrest me? What a joke. He laughed and said, what kind of scoundrel is this? To actually use such a despicable method. How laughable. Is it really that funny? Jean Mubai. How ridiculous is today's matter? Can you tell this old man in detail? This old man is very interested, very interested. An extremely gloomy and oppressive voice came from outside. Even with Jean Mubai's cultivation, after hearing this, he couldn't help but shiver. Chao Guofeng. Although the tone of the person who spoke was strange and out of character, Jean Mubai was still able to instantly determine that the person who spoke was Chao Guofeng. The sky gradually brightened, and in the hazy morning light, 7 imposing figures slowly walked in from the entrance of the small courtyard. Their eyes were bloodshot, and it was obvious that they were filled with extreme hatred. All of them stared fixedly at Jean Mubai, and their gazes instantly focused on the blood-stained black clothing in his hands. The 7 of them moved in unison, and at the same time, their teeth chattered loudly. At this moment, Jean Mubai could faintly feel that something was wrong, but he did not pay too much attention to it. In his mind, no matter how big the matter was, it could still be discussed. Everyone had been friends for hundreds of years, so could there really be anything that they could not settle? Casually throwing the black clothing to the side, he took 2 steps forward and said with a friendly smile, "Brother Chao, why are you here so early? Could it be that you can't wait to accept the free and natural physique as your disciple and are here to discuss it with this old man?" Jean Mubai's words could be said to be mentioning the pot that shouldn't be boiled, directly stabbing Chao Guofeng's bleeding wound once again, especially his laughter. In Chao Guofeng's ears, it was like mockery, and it was mockery that rejoiced in Chao Guofeng's misfortune. This was equivalent to saying, "You can do it. Didn't you refuse to accept my great-grandson as a disciple? You want to accept a free and natural physique genius? Go ahead and accept a pile of rotten meat as a disciple. Even if I, Jean Mubai, can't get it, you, Chao Guofeng, can forget about having it. Want to be the master of the #1 expert in the world? Dream on." Especially when he said those words, it was as if he had casually thrown the black clothing he had just taken off onto the ground. He did not even bother to conceal it. In the eyes of Chao Guofeng and the other 7 holy emperors, this was a blatant provocation. The boiling anger of Chao Guofeng and the other experts was like a ladle of oil being poured onto it. Free and natural physique. Accept him as a disciple. Discuss with you. Chao Guofeng spat out word by word in a tone as if his heart was being pierced and his blood was flowing. Jean Mubai. Discuss with you? F*CKU. Jean Mubai's expression instantly stiffened. He had never expected Chao Guofeng to spout such vulgarities without any intention of concealing it. Following Chao Guofeng's words, Jean Mubai immediately reacted. The person who had scolded him so loudly was none other than this holy Emperor Chao in front of him. The 2 loud scoldings had both included his name and surname, brazenly and brazenly, as if he was afraid that others didn't know that the person Chao Guofeng was scolding was me. Jean Mubai. Who was Jean Mubai? He was an expert of the holy emperor realm. Not to mention scolding openly. Even if his voice was heavy, it was not allowed. Wherever he went, there would be flattery and flattery. Chao Guofeng's 2 scoldings were extremely vulgar and did not have the slightest bit of self-restraint. Jean Mubai's rage instantly soared to the 9 heavens. Even if your Misty and Misty Mansion is powerful, you can't be so arrogant to this extent, right? Chao Guofeng. Jean Mubai hollered, a cold light flashing in his eyes. This old man has always treated you with respect and has tolerated you in every way for hundreds of years. This old man tolerated you, but that doesn't mean that this old man is afraid of you. Since you've scolded me like this, you must give me an explanation today. Otherwise what? What do you dare to do? Chao Guofeng smiled coldly. His smile was actually filled with dense, killing intent. It was a kind of sharpness that was accompanied by a kind of sorrow that was greater than the desolation of a dead heart. Otherwise, I, Jean Mubai, will not rest until one of us is dead. Jean Mubai said fiercely. Jean Mubai's face had already turned ashen from anger. In addition to that, he felt that he was in the right. So how could he be willing to give in? At this moment, dawn had arrived, and everyone had already woken up. Coupled with Chao Guofeng's loud shout, the experts from the three holy lands had rushed over without even putting on their clothes. When they rushed over to take a look, they could not help but be dumbfounded. The person in charge of Hermitage's side, Jean Mubai, and the 7 holy emperors from the Misty and Misty Mansion were in a standoff. The 8 of them were glaring at each other fiercely like fighting cocks. The atmosphere was extremely heavy and oppressive, as if a fight could break out at any moment. Everyone's face was filled with grief and indignation. Chao Guofeng and the others were so angry that their faces were distorted and their eyeballs were almost popping out. Jean Mubai's face was also ashen, and his entire body was ferocious. It was as if both sides had an irreconcilable hatred. Just what could have caused the 8 Saint Emperors to be enraged to such an extent? Isn't this a little too unimaginable? I clearly saw the 8 of them chatting and laughing as they went out for a drink yesterday. Who would have thought that the situation would change in a single night? It was as if an irreconcilable blood feud had been formed between them. Now that there were so many people watching, Jean Mubai could not put down his pride. He knew that he was no match for them, but he still had to endure it. Otherwise, how would he be able to stand in front of others in the future? As for Chao Guofeng, he would definitely not give in. What he wanted to do the most right now was to smash Jean Mubai's head with a single slap. Hearing Jean Mubai's heroic words, Chao Guofeng let out a long and mournful laugh. Irreconcilable? Jean Mubai, you're really good at pretending. Do you think that I can still coexist with you in this world? What a ridiculous joke. Jean Mubai, it's been 600 years, and I didn't realize that you were actually such a person. He looked at Jean Mubai with grief and indignation. Using a tone that sounded like he was pounding his chest, he said with infinite regret, "This old man was blind. This old man was blind for a whole 600 years. Jean Mubai, I finally know what kind of person you are today. No, you don't even have the word person in your eyes. You are a bastard who is worse than a beast. Don't you want to be irreconcilable with me? I'll fulfill your wish. Today, only one of us will be able to leave this place alive." Scoundrel! Jean Mubai's temper flared up as he blurted out, "Chao Guofeng, you've gone too far. You didn't accept my great-grandson as your disciple. You watched as I, Jean Mubai, had no descendants. Then, you forcefully snatched my disciple, leaving me without a successor. Just as you said, helping me is a favor, but not helping me is a reason. I'll treat it as if I've known you for 600 years for nothing. But now, you actually scolded me in public? When the words came out of your mouth, actually became my fault. It's Jean Mubai's fault. Chao Guofeng, it's really a pity that you don't become a storyteller or an actor." Jean Mubai was extremely sad and indignant. This was too much of a bully. This was too much of a bully. I've never seen such a shameless person. If you don't want to help me, then forget it. If you see a good talent, then bring him back. I haven't thought of a countermeasure yet. Besides, if you insist on snatching him, I'll give him to you. He's already living in your courtyard. What else do you want? Now, you actually dare to mention my name and scold me in the middle of the night. Am I, Jean Mubai, someone who can be scolded so casually? You, Chao Guofeng, care about your face. But do you think that I, Jean Mubai, should not care about my face? My, Jean Mubai's, face is also worth 1,000 gold pieces. You think you're so great, just because you're one rank higher? If we really fight, even if I can't win, I still have the means to drag you away with me. The people from the 3 holy lands all try to persuade them. But the 8 people in the field all stiffened their necks and glared at each other with hatred in their eyes. A battle was about to break out at any moment. None of them were willing to accept the persuasion of others. Jean Mubai, you despicable scum, hand over your life. Chao Guofeng roared. He couldn't bear it any longer. His body suddenly disappeared from the spot. When he reappeared, he'd already circled around Jean Mubai and fiercely attacked him with more than 10 palms. Jean Mubai was filled with rage. He neither dodged nor gave way, and each of his palms met the blow head-on. Loud banging sounds rang out in the field. Following that, the ground started to crack. The walls of the courtyard started to collapse, and the houses started to collapse amidst the dust and smoke. The two of them simultaneously countered each other's moves. At the same time, they leaped up into the air and extended the battle into the sky. The spectators below didn't even have the time to understand what was going on, and the two of them had already started fighting. Chapter 847. After a loud explosion in the air, a shocking scene suddenly appeared. With two long roars, the two of them suddenly merged and separated, leaving behind a series of afterimages in the air. Then they once again clashed, their speed getting faster and faster. In the eyes of the people below, there were suddenly countless Jean Mu bays in the sky, and, at the same time, there were also countless Chao Guofongs. Every one of them was abnormally real, and they were fighting each other. When the phantoms on this side disappeared, more phantoms appeared on the other side. The speed of the two people had obviously reached the limit. Such a fast battle was not unfamiliar to the audience. After all, they were all martial saints and above. Even if their strength was not as good as Chao Gua and Jean Mu Bai, they were still roughly on the same level. While the spectators were marveling at the skills of Chao Zhan and Lu Qiue, they could also tell that the two of them were fighting with all their might. Every move they made was aimed at their opponent's vital points. Neither of them showed any mercy. Between the two of them, if either of them made the slightest mistake, they would immediately face a disaster. Those extremely ruthless moves sent chills down the spines of the spectators. If these moves were used to attack themselves, they might not be able to withstand it. If they couldn't withstand it, what would the result be? Without a doubt, if they failed, they would definitely die miserably. The comrades of the Holy Emperor who had once fought side by side, old friends who had known each other for more than 600 years, were actually fighting each other, vowing to fight to the death. The culprit, young Master Jun Mo Xie, was beaming with joy as he watched from midair. In fact, he was extremely excited. A battle between experts of the Holy Emperor level. This was a rare opportunity to observe and learn. Moreover, the two Holy Emperor experts were not holding back at all, and were going all out in a life and death battle. Although this matter was caused by him, Jun Moxie did not feel the slightest bit guilty. This could only be said. Closing the door and blocking the entrance was purely a coincidence. I've never thought of becoming a genius in your eyes, and even more so, I don't want to become the successor of you bunch of old fellows. I just came out for a meal and coincidentally met the world's #1 madman. Just as I was about to execute my grand plan, you guys messed up my plans. This young master is definitely not that free and natural physique. This young master still has this bit of self-awareness. It's definitely not that Xiantian physique. It's definitely a Hotian physique that can't be any Hotian. He only started cultivating the Hotian physique at the age of 16 or 17. Compared to other geniuses in the world, he was 15 or 16 years late. Perhaps I should say that I have the Hongjun Pagoda physique. Have you heard of it? Never heard of it? That's right. It would be a miracle if you had heard of it. To be honest, this young master's eyesight is not ordinary. What qualifications do you have to accept me as your successor? Can your cultivation method compare to the world's #1 cultivation method, the art of unlocking heaven's fortune? Do you have the Hongjun Pagoda that can provide unlimited spiritual energy? Do you have primordial violet chi? It's not that I'm looking down on you, but you probably haven't even heard of this before. If you want to accept me as your successor, you'd better cultivate for another few thousand years. You want to take this young master in with that little bit of strength and the rubbish in your hands? You're far from qualified. At the very least, one had to be as strong as the 9 nether first young master to barely qualify, right? But that was only a candidate, not the first candidate. The 3 holy lands were mighty, and the misty mansion was overbearing. He swore to be enemies with this young master, but this young master couldn't afford to offend him for the time being. Even if he fought him head-on, he wouldn't be able to defeat him. I was just worrying and looking for allies everywhere, but you guys scared my allies away. So, since you think I'm a piece of meat, if I don't find some trouble for you, wouldn't I be letting you down? From the moment you discovered me, this trouble was destined to fall on your heads. He didn't notice. Then I can only say Saul, 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 Saul. This is the authentic song of the Oriole, using Chan Er's words. After all, I'm right in front of you. It's your own fault that you couldn't discover me, but you can't blame me. So, Jun Da Xiao put in all his effort to show off his best acting skills along the way, vividly recreating the feeling of a simple mountain village youth coming to a famous big city, and then unexpectedly seeing a grand scene that he had never seen before. He even showed off his so-called free and natural physique, ate the spirit stone immortal milk, and then acted humble and respectful to his teacher. 100% acting, even though this actor's quality was actually very idol-like. In just a few sentences, he had already tricked those old fellows who were already in love with him to the point that they couldn't bear to part with him. He had successfully built up a deep emotional foundation. As long as there was this emotional foundation, it would be even easier to do things. No matter if it was doing good or bad things, as long as there was an emotional bond, everything would go smoothly. Once there was an emotional foundation, even if it was rape or being raped, it would still be a loving couple. As for framing someone, it would be a walk in the park, and success would come naturally. And it would also be able to trigger the greatest amount of indignation. So, when the few holy emperors in the Misty Mansion completely accepted him and were discussing his future, Jun Da Xiao used the yin-yang escape technique to find an unlucky fellow from the Chun family who was about the same size as him, sealed his acupoints, and brought him back. At a suitable time, he purposely made some noise, changed into black clothes, and floated out of the window with that unlucky fellow in tow. Jun Da Xiao actually didn't do much in this process. He just ran wildly for a while, and then smashed the head of that unlucky fellow with a slap. Then, he said a few words in a hoarse voice and directly left. The movement technique that he used in the process was naturally the unique skill that made the Holy Emperor famous. It was a pity that Jun Da Xiao didn't imitate it very well. But then again, if he imitated it too well, it would instead raise suspicions. According to Jun Moxie's estimation, after this classic framing scene, the few people from the Misty Mansion and the 3 Holy Lands would definitely quarrel and part on bad terms. It might even cause the temporary alliance between the 3 Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion to collapse. If the only enemies left were the people from the 3 Holy Lands, the pressure on him would be greatly reduced. But Jun Da Xiao seemed to have overestimated the endurance of this bunch of old fogies, or rather, underestimated the importance of his free and natural physique. These old fogies didn't act according to the script at all, and started fighting to the death the moment they started. This result was far beyond Jun Da Xiao's expectations. It seemed to be a little too good, too ferocious, too shocking. Looks like this drug was too strong. How would he know that with a free and natural physique, he was a living treasure in Chao Guofeng's eyes? The degree of importance was even more precious than having a child at an old age. Seeing his ideal free and natural physique, his successor, turn into a pile of rotten meat, Chao Guofeng directly broke down. How would Jun Moxie know that Chao Guofeng had been searching for such a good talent for 500 to 600 years? 500 to 600 years of hope turned into flowing water in an instant. If Chao Guofeng hadn't seen Jun Moxie's physique before, then when Jun Moxie died, Chao Guofeng would at most sigh and say, "What a pity." But now, Holy Emperor Chao's acceptance of him as a disciple was already set in stone. Just as he was looking forward to the future, he was suddenly smashed down from heaven to hell. Holy Emperor Chao was equivalent to playing an extreme bungee jumping between heaven and hell. This disparity was simply too great. So Chao Guofeng's madness was completely within the expectations of Holy Emperor Chao Guofeng, but it wasn't within Jun Moxie's consideration. But now, he wasn't considering these things. He was stroking his chin and thinking. Since it was already so lively, How should he deal with it, so that the battle below would become even more vicious? If more than 100 people here were to die together, how wonderful would that be? Below, in mid-air, the battle between the two Holy Emperor experts had already reached a climax. Both Holy Emperor Chao Guofeng had already taken out their weapons, and it was a true hand-to-hand battle. The two long swords were like dragons soaring in the sky, moving as fast as lightning, shuttling back and forth. The two figures split into thousands of figures, fighting with their lives on the line. On the ground, there were 6 Holy Emperor Chao Guofeng who had a better understanding of the situation, as well as a large group of spectators who had no idea what was going on. They were all exclaiming in shock and cold sweat. The Holy Emperor is indeed the Holy Emperor. Ah, look at this attack power. It's really powerful. Ah, luckily, the two people above were still relatively close in terms of cultivation, and weren't at the point where life and death could be determined in just a few moves. Thus, they were still able to successfully control the force they released, targeting it, and not letting it leak out. Otherwise, this beautiful Qin manor would have long been turned into a pile of rubble. The leader of the illusory Blood Seas side, Holy Emperor Hai Wuya, walked over, wearing a purple robe. He frowned at the 6 Holy Emperors of Misty Mansion and asked, "Everyone, what's going on? Why did the two of them start fighting for no reason? Aren't they still discussing about the free and natural physique disciple? Look at the two of them. How are they going to discuss this?" The Holy Emperor of Misty Mansion, Bai Chi Feng, said with a straight face, "Thank you for your concern, Lord Hai. There's no need to discuss the matter of accepting a disciple anymore." "Oh, Brother Bai, what happened this time? Please enlighten me." Hai Wuya raised his head to look at the battle in the sky, then turned back to look at Bai Chi Feng indifferently. "What else is there to say? It's all because that Zhan Mu Bai is despicable and shameless to the extreme. Brother Hai, your 3 holy lands are really full of talents, ah. This is also because old Chao made the first move. If old Chao didn't make a move, this old man would have made a move as well. This kind of trash really dirties this old man's eyes. Just based on him, he can actually become a pillar of support for the 3 holy lands. Looks like the hermitage has really declined." Bai Chi Feng was also filled with anger. He flicked his sleeves and turned his head, not wanting to speak anymore. That disciple of his, he also had a 7th of it, and he was crippled just like that. "Today, I went to the vehicle management office to register for a driver's license. Very sad. I was found out to be colorblind. AI, when I was a soldier, my eyes were still fine. Why am I colorblind now? So depressing." The Annie at the vehicle management office pointed at a picture and asked me, "What is this?" I shook my head and asked again, "What is this picture?" I looked at it carefully for a long time and said embarrassedly, "It looks like a asterisk, 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 so I was chased out." Chapter 848. Brother Bai is also involved in this matter? Brother Bai, you better tell us in detail. How is Zhan Mubai despicable and shameless? Another person in sackcloth came over. The leader of the Supreme Golden City team, this time, was a Holy Emperor expert, He Chio. Bai Chi Feng spat out a breath of air and said gloomily, "Yesterday we went out together and discovered a youth with a free and natural physique. You guys should know about this, right?" The two nodded at the same time. Bai Chi Feng said, "The 7 of us agreed to take this youth as our disciple and bring him back to the Misty Mansion to train him. But who would have thought? Just an hour ago, Zhan Mubai snuck in, wanting to kidnap this youth. When he was discovered by us, Zhan Mubai saw that he couldn't escape our pursuit and actually killed the youth with a slap on the spot. This kind of behavior is really despicable and shameless. Not to mention old Chao. Even the 6 of us would never let him go. How could he do it? That was a rare seedling that was hard to find in this world. Free and natural physique. F***CK. Bai Chi Feng gritted his teeth, and when he said this, the muscles on his face started to twitch. His eyes shone fiercely, and in the end, he couldn't bear the huge disappointment in his heart and started to curse. It can't be right. Hai Wuya and He Ji Chio exclaimed at the same time, looking at each other. If that was really the case, then this matter was really serious. Who didn't know that Chao Guofeng had been searching for disciples for hundreds of years, and his eyes were already green with greed? Just like that, the disciple he valued so much was killed with a slap, and it was even a free and natural physique. This Zhang Mubai was really daring. If it were the two of them, they would never dare to do such a thing. This was directly a life and death feud. This kind of hatred, to Chao Guofeng, was even more irreconcilable than killing one's father or stealing one's wife. The way the two looked at Zhang Mubai instantly changed. To be able to do such a thing, Zhang Mubai was even crazier than the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. We chased him all the way here. Also, look at that black shirt on the ground. When we arrived, Zhang Mubai had taken off his body. We saw it with our own eyes. How could it be fake? Bai Qifeng's face was as cold as ice. Besides, framing the holy emperor of your 3 holy lands for no reason. Is there a need for us to do that? Could it actually be true? Old John really did this? The 2 holy emperors were dumbfounded. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect Zhang Mubai to be so despicable. Believe it or not, it's up to you. This Bai has no interest in playing with you. Bai Qifeng glared, about to explode. Although the 2 of them were also holy emperor experts, Bai Qifeng was also not afraid, since they had already shed all pretense of cordiality. So what if he had to fight 2 more holy emperors? There was nowhere for him to vent his anger. His words were not polite at all, but in the ears of Hai Wuya and He Ji Chio, it increased the credibility of this matter. Chao Guofeng was steady and scheming, while Bai Qifeng was as sharp as a sword. The combination of the 2 had always been the golden combination of the misty mansion. These 2 people were the least likely to purposely stir up a fight between the misty mansion and the 3 holy lands. Even if there was the slightest possibility, the one who made the move should have been Bai Qifeng. But now, the one who made the move was the usually calm Chao Guofeng, and it seemed like Chao Guofeng had a deep friendship with Zhang Mubai for hundreds of years. If it wasn't for the fact that something really happened that caused this 3rd-level holy emperor to completely lose control and be heartbroken, this usually steady holy emperor would definitely not be so rash. Could it be that Zhang Mubai really did such a thing? But, no matter what, they couldn't just watch as Zhang Mubai was killed by the people of the misty mansion. The 2 of them looked at each other and quickly came to a decision. They shouted at the same time, "Stop, you 2! I have something to say." Before he finished speaking, a loud bang sounded in the air. Then, a figure shot through the ground like a shooting star, like a bear that had lost control and crashed into a wall. Plop, plop, plop. He crashed through more than a dozen walls before finally stopping. A figure stood up from the ground with a face full of dirt and grime. With a loud roar of grief and indignation, he jumped out. That person was none other than Zhang Mubai. On the other side, Chao Guofeng's figure landed on the ground unsteadily. He staggered back continuously. Every step he took left a deep footprint on the green stone floor. Stone shards flew up into the sky, hitting the walls around him. He retreated for 20 to 30 steps, but he still couldn't stop his momentum. His back slammed heavily into the wall, and with a loud boom, the entire wall collapsed. But Chao Guofeng had also finally stopped his momentum. Straightening his back, he stood up straight. His white beard fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were spitting fire. With a roar, he charged towards Zhang Mubai, obviously intending to continue the battle, which one of the people present didn't have sharp eyes. In this battle, Zhang Mubai fell to the ground in a sorry state. He couldn't even stand properly. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. As for Chao Guofeng, he only staggered a few steps with a flushed face. It was obvious that Zhang Mubai had suffered a huge loss. If the battle continued, he would really die in Chao Guofeng's hands. Stop! Hai Wuya and He Ji Chio rushed forward and stopped Chao Guofeng. Brother Chao, don't be impatient. Please listen to me first. Chao Guofeng saw that they were only here to stop him, but not Zhang Mubai. He was instantly enraged and snorted. The three of you want to join hands? Even if the three of you come me together, what do I have to fear? Today I won't rest until one of us is dead. Brother Chow, you've misunderstood. Hai Wuya laughed bitterly. It seemed like Chow Guofeng was really anxious this time, to actually provoke him so indiscriminately. Before Chow Guofeng could reply, loud bangs rang out. The three of them looked over at the same time, only to see Bai Chi Feng's white robes fluttering in the wind. He had already clashed with Zhang Mubai. One was an arrow at the end of its flight and was injured, while the other was still full of energy, ready to attack. And these two people were originally equivalent to a second-level holy emperor. Who was stronger and who was weaker, there was no need to ask. Zhang Mubai didn't even have time to defend, and his body and face were struck repeatedly. Bai Chi Feng, even you dare to go against this old man. Can your Misty Mansion faction really be so unbridled and lawless? Right now, Zhang Mubai could be said to be filled with grief and indignation. Heavens, great earth! Just who did I offend? Who the F***CK did I offend? F***CK. Even if you want to bully someone, you should at least give me a reasonable reason, right? All of you are holy emperor level experts, One is like this, two are also the same, attacking without distinguishing right from wrong, and taking advantage of someone's precarious position. Who can stand it? What is this? Even the process of framing me is skipped. Is there still any justice in this world? Brother Bai, stop. Quick, stop. Have mercy. Hai Wuya hurriedly went over to stop. He could only shout, but didn't dare to interfere. Once he did, it would mean that the battle between the three of them had escalated to a dispute between the three holy lands and the Misty Mansion. This responsibility, he couldn't bear it. But how fast was the methods of a holy emperor-level expert? In just the time it took to say a sentence, Zhang Mubai's face was already covered in bruises. His eyes had turned into panda eyes, and blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth. His expression was extremely miserable, and he looked extremely pathetic. After fighting for half a day, even though the situation was not favorable, even though he was in a somewhat pathetic state, there were no injuries on his face. But in this short moment, Bai Chi Feng had aimed at the empty space to beat up a fallen dog, completely aiming for his face. This holy Emperor Zhang was like a pig's head that had just come out of the oven, his eyes shining like stars. When Hai Wuya flew over to pull Bai Chi Feng away, Zhang Mubai had already suffered over a dozen punches, his head spinning as he tumbled to the ground. The experts from the three holy lands all had a look of pity on their faces. This was too much, wasn't it? All of them were experts in the world. Was there a need to be so heavy-handed? Even if you killed him, you shouldn't have hit his face. Losing face like this grudge would not be resolved so easily. And the last leader of the three holy lands, He Chiu, noticed that the other 5 experts from the Misty Mansion were actually venting their anger, and there was a faint killing intent in their eyes. It was obvious that they did not have the time to make a move just now, or perhaps Bai Chi Feng had gotten there first. If there was a chance, these 5 people might have made a move. He Chiu was greatly shocked in his heart. Just what major event had Zhang Mubai done to actually cause the 7 great Saint Emperors to have such great resentment toward him? From the looks of it, these 7 people simply had the intention of ganging up on him and dismembering him. This matter, perhaps it's a misunderstanding. Everyone, please calm down. We've all been brothers for hundreds of years. What matter can't we sit down and discuss? Although He Chiu knew that the grudge here was not light, he could not help but speak up for Zhang Mubai. No matter what, the people from a Misty Mansion were outsiders. Chow Guofeng spat harshly. There's no way this matter can be resolved peacefully. Zhang Mubai turned the disciple that I've spent 600 years searching for into nothingness with a single palm. This grudge is absolutely irreconcilable. Zhang Mubai is jealous of the talented and narrow-minded. If he doesn't give me a satisfactory explanation, I'll seek justice even if I have to kill my way to the hermitage. Chow Guofeng, you bastard. Zhang Mubai had just crawled up from the ground. His face was covered in blood, and he was so ashamed and angry that he wanted to commit suicide. Like a ghost, he cried out in a hoarse voice. Chao Guofeng, you've really gone too far today. First, you insulted me for no reason, and then attacked me first. Could it be that I, Zhan Mu Bai, should be bullied by you? This old man has lived an honest and upright life, with a clear conscience. When have I ever been narrow-minded and jealous of the talented? Chapter 849. Third Night. Jun Moxie is the greatest threat to the three holy lands. This old man had no choice but to launch a sneak attack that day, and it was indeed because I had a guilty conscience. But to the people of the three holy lands, it had removed a fatal threat. This old man may have lost my reputation, but I still have a clear conscience. If I could do it all over again, this old man would still make the same choice. For the great cause of the holy lands, what does this old man's mere reputation count for? Well said. Even this despicable act of sneak attacking a junior can be described in such a righteous and benevolent manner. Zhan Mu Bai, didn't you just say that as long as there's an existence that threatens the three holy lands, we should use any means to get rid of it? Even if it's the most despicable and despicable means, we will not hesitate. Bai Chi Feng said viciously. That's right. Is there anything wrong with that? Could it be that you are completely indifferent to the threat of the Misty Mansion? Everyone is the same. Why are you acting so strangely? Zhan Mu Bai said angrily, with a sense of righteousness. The moment Zhan Mu Bai said this, everyone present looked at him with a look of admiration. Only He Zhiqiu noticed that the 7 holy emperors of the Misty Mansion's eyes had changed again. If there was only killing intent in their eyes before, it was definitely a naked killing intent now. Good, very well said. Zhan Mu Bai, now you finally admit that you killed our disciple? Speaking of which, that disciple of ours really deserves to die. Isn't he another great threat to the three holy lands? As long as we can get rid of him, the three holy lands can rest easy from now on. Bai Chi Feng's voice became more and more vicious. Zhan Mu Bai coughed violently, his eyes filled with hatred and indignation, even a little confused. As he said this, his eyes suddenly widened, as if he had just regained his senses. What did you just say? What do you mean get rid of a great threat? You said that I killed your disciple with my own hands in front of you? Where did this come from? What the hell are you talking about? Now that things have come to this, you still want to deny it. Didn't you say it clearly just now? Aren't you afraid that my disciple will become a huge problem for your three holy lands in the future? Chao Guofeng was so angry that he almost vomited blood. I saw it with my own eyes. I followed you all the way here, and I saw you with a bloody robe. You still want to deny it? Do you think you can deny it? Me? Why should I deny it? I killed your disciple? Me? Zhan Mu Bai shook his head. This brother of his was first scolded, then beaten up, and now he was being pestered with so many words. He was really confused. Your disciple? Where did you get your disciple from? Are you still playing the fool? That free and natural physique. Chao Guofeng stomped his feet and roared. Just as he was about to charge forward and attack again, when he said the words free and natural physique, Chao Guofeng felt as though his heart was being stabbed by a knife. In 600 years, he had only found one. Before Chao Guofeng could rush over, Zhan Mu Bai had already jumped up in shock. His eyes widened and he shouted, What did you say? What did you say? The free and natural physique was killed by me? Chao Guofeng, what kind of nightmare are you having? What nonsense are you saying? That brat. After saying that, he regained his senses and shouted angrily, That brat is dead? Bai Chi Feng looked at him with a cold smile and said coldly, Zhan Mu Bai, keep pretending. Try your best to pretend. Why didn't you become an actor back then? With your acting skills, you would definitely be a famous actor, and your achievements would definitely be above the achievements of the Holy Emperor. Pretend your head. Zhan Mu Bai flew into a rage. How could I possibly kill him? I can't even wait to treasure him. How could I possibly kill him? Just last night, this old man specially sought out Brother Hai and Brother He for a discussion. Both of you helped me with the plan, and this old man paid 2 stalks of 1,000-year-old spear herbs and 2 divine weapons. Only after midnight did I manage to convince Brother Hai and Brother He to help. I was just about to discuss who the disciple should be. How could he have been killed by me in the blink of an eye? What kind of matter is this? As he spoke, Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu also nodded their heads, their faces slightly awkward. Although the two of them had agreed to help, they had also received some benefits. Now that this benefit was revealed by Zhang Mubai in front of everyone, they couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. But they also knew that Zhang Mubai was also forced into a corner now, and he definitely had to bring out the best evidence. Although they were unhappy, they did not really find it strange. With Brother Hai and Brother He as witnesses, there is naturally no doubt about this. But after the discussion, what did you do? Did you think that by purposely mystifying things and coming up with such a smokescreen, you were absolutely foolproof? After that, you changed into black clothes and snuck into the courtyard that we were staying in and kidnapped him. But you were discovered by us, and seeing that there was no hope of escaping, you committed such a despicable act. Since there was no hope of taking him in as a disciple, you hardened your heart and killed him to prevent him from becoming a huge problem for your 3 holy lands in the future. Could it be that all of this has nothing to do with you just because you don't admit it? Zhang Mubai, you dare to do it, but you're afraid to admit it. You're really trying to cover up. Despicable to the extreme. Chao Guofeng said angrily. In a flash, he had already grabbed the black clothes on the ground. Zhang Mubai, the 7 of us brothers chased you all the way here, all the way to your courtyard, and saw you change into this black clothes with our own eyes, and you still want to deny it. You really make this old man's teeth turn cold. This old man must have really been blind to actually treat you as a friend. Black clothes, black clothes. Zhang Mubai's eyes stared blankly, and he finally understood that he had really been ruthlessly tricked by someone this time. The various unforeseen events just now flashed before his eyes. The sound, him coming out, the wall collapsing, the black clothes suddenly rushing over, and then him catching it, and then Chao Guofeng and the other 6 people arriving outside the wall. The methods of the person who had plotted in the dark were all closely linked to one another. They were truly meticulous to the extreme. He actually didn't even have a chance to defend himself before falling into a huge conspiracy, directly causing the Saint Emperors to turn against each other. Zhang Mubai trembled violently and jumped up. He was so aggrieved that he almost vomited blood. These clothes were thrown to me by someone else. This is a trap. Someone else has set up this trap to frame me. How could I possibly do such a despicable act? Frame you? Ha ha ha. Chao Guofeng was so anxious that he laughed instead. Zhang Mubai, you don't need to quibble anymore. Daring to admit to your actions, that's the style of a gentleman. Daring to act, but being afraid to take responsibility was the behavior of a vile person. Tonight, no matter how glib your tongue is, you will not be spared from blood. My disciple, may your heroic spirit not be far away. Watch as your master takes revenge for you, and make this thief pay with blood. This wasn't done by me. Holy Emperor Zhang's entire body was trembling, and his eyes were filled with urgency. His expression was filled with extreme grief and indignation, and his miserable appearance with his bruised face and bleeding mouth and nose made him look extremely pitiful. The grievances all over his body couldn't be washed away at all. He looked around and roared again. This really wasn't done by me. Bai Chi Feng chuckled coldly. Zhang Mubai, no matter what your intentions were, the result is that you've destroyed the hope of the 7 of us. Do you think that just by saying that it wasn't done by you, it can prove that it wasn't you? What a joke. Hermitage's ability to distort black and white is probably not this good, right? To think that you still dare to call yourself open and above board with a clear conscience. How did you even think of saying that? You said that it was done by me? Where's the evidence? Where's the corpse? Just based on the words of a few of you, you want to convict me? What's the reason? Why did I kill that child? Zhang Mubai roared, the muscles at the corner of his eyes twitching and the veins on his forehead bulging. The facts are all there. Who doesn't know? You've already said the reason yourself. What a strong reason, and you're still asking us for the reason. The evidence is this black robe. As for the corpse, Bai Chi Feng scoffed and said coldly, Old Six, go and bring the corpse over. Let Holy Emperor Zhan see his masterpiece. The rest of the brothers, prepare yourselves. This is revenge, not a spar. Listen to my command, attack together, and kill this shameless Zhan Mu Bai. Whoever dares to stop us will be the enemy of the Misty Mansion and the death of the 7 of us. A white-clothed figure leaped out, and not long after, he returned with a corpse. This corpse was headless, and it looked extremely miserable. It was only wearing undergarments, but one could still tell that it was indeed the corpse of a young man. Whether it was from the texture of the muscles or the development of the body, this corpse was definitely not more than 20 years old. Throwing the corpse on the ground with a pu sound, Bai Chi Feng said to Lang Lang, Now that the evidence and the witness are here, do you still have anything to say, open and above board, Holy Emperor Zhan? Zhan Mu Bai's body trembled, looking at the horrifying corpse in disbelief. His eyes were blank, and his body swayed a little. Do it! Bai Chi Feng waved his hand, and 6 figures soared into the sky at the same time, their ultimate moves ready to be unleashed. Suddenly, Yonger, Yonger, my Yang, the head of the Chun family, Chun Qing Tian, who had been watching from the side, suddenly stared blankly at the corpse. Tears streamed down his face, and he let out a loud cry. Ignoring all the super experts present, he pounced forward crazily. Lifting up the corpse to take a closer look, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, twitching uncontrollably. At the place where he was flipped up on the side of his left knee, there was an obvious mole. When he was lying on the ground, only half of the mole was revealed. But now that he was flipped over, it was completely exposed. This person was the second son of the Chun family, Chun Yang. This sudden and unexpected turn of events caused everyone present to be dumbstruck for a time, and all their movements came to a halt. Jun Moxie, who was hiding in the air, also cursed inwardly. Shit, just as they were about to kill someone, the real identity of this damn corpse was actually recognized. The heavens really did not follow one's wishes. At that time, I was only focused on the body's age and figure, and didn't even notice the minute details. Damn it, after a long time, Chun Qing Tian finally regained consciousness, crying out loud. The entire Chun family confirmed the identity of the corpse, especially after Madame Chun confirmed it on the spot, as well as tens of female servants of the Chun family. All of them agreed that this corpse was definitely not that free and natural physique disciple of Saint Emperor Chao, but the second son of the Chun family, Qin Yang. Chapter 850. 4th chapter. Try again and see if you can get a 5th chapter. As these maids pointed out the culprit, some of them actually revealed looks of glee, but they didn't dare to show it openly. So when Jun Daxiao went out in a hurry last night, how could there be a young man similar to him among the guards? Just as he was feeling anxious, he heard the sorrowful cries of a young girl coming from one of the rooms. Looking towards the direction of the sound, he saw an almost naked scoundrel forcing a maid with a lecherous smile on his face. Jun Moxie didn't even have time to ask for the reason before he knocked the young man out with a palm and saved the girl, then carried this unlucky fellow back. Even Jun Moxie didn't expect that in his haste, he had actually done such a good deed, sending this lecherous second young master of the Chun family onto the road of no return. With this sudden turn of events, everyone, including Chao Guofeng and Zhan Mu Bai, were all dumbfounded. Since this corpse was the second young master of the Chun family, then where had the prodigy with the free and natural physique gone to? Taking advantage of this opportunity, Zhan Mu Bai recounted what had happened to him. He emphasized, if I really killed him, why would I be holding onto a piece of black cloth? Since you guys had lost me before, then with my Zhan Mu Bai's ability, not to mention a black robe, even if there were thousands of them, I would have long destroyed the corpse. Other than the Chun family, who among these saints of the Holy Emperor would care that the second young master of the Chun family was dead? Everyone was thinking about one thing. Where had the prodigy with the free and natural physique gone to? This was the main point. If this matter was a conspiracy, then wasn't the battle between Chao Guofeng and Zhang Mubai extremely unjust? But Zhang Mubai's side was in a terrible state. His clothes were torn and tattered, his face was bruised, and his face was disfigured. A chunk of his beard had been chopped off, and his eyes were swollen like a panda's. His lips were swollen like sausages, and 2 of his teeth had been knocked out by Bai Chi Feng. He was a classic example of a pig's head in this world. Not to mention, he also had quite a few internal injuries. Even for an ordinary person, this would be unbearable, let alone the person involved, the Holy Emperor. What a great humiliation! Chao Guofeng, Bai Chi Feng, and the rest looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Who would have thought that the 8 holy emperors, the world's top powerhouses, would be so ruthlessly tricked by someone? But at the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. As long as that genius is not dead, no matter whose hands he falls into, he will be found one day. But Zhang Mubai was panting heavily, his eyes spitting fire as he glared at Chao Guofeng and the rest. Chao Guofeng, you son of AB** TC, I will not live under the same sky with you. This injustice had finally been cleared, and Saint Emperor Zhang could finally clamor in a righteous manner. After his teeth were knocked out, his words were leaking air. Zhang Mubai even had the thought of dying. He was beaten like a sandbag just now, and it was in public, and that shocking scolding was probably heard by everyone in the entire Chrysanthemum City. How was he supposed to explain this matter? I suffered this beating for nothing. He should at least give an explanation. Holy Emperor Zhang cried, his tears falling like rain. In Zhang Mubai's life, other than crying when he was young, he would only cry under special circumstances. That was when he was extremely wronged, and he would only cry after the grievance was cleared. Right now, Holy Emperor Zhang was crying. I've lost too much. I've been wronged too much, as he thought. Zhang Mubai suddenly thought of a very important matter. The corpse in front of him was fake, and he had defended his innocence. But where did the real person go? His eyeballs spun rapidly, and the more he thought, the more he felt it was possible. The black-robed corpse had just been thrown in, and Chao Guofeng and the rest came in right after. Damn it, even if they wanted to catch an adulterer, there wouldn't be such a perfect timing. Who would frame me at such a critical juncture? Other than Chao Guofeng, who else could it be? F***CK. Zhang Mubai punched the ground and roared angrily. Chao Guofeng, you still have the face to call me despicable? You are the despicable one. To monopolize a free and natural physique talent as your disciple. You actually did such a thing. Ever since he knew that he had made a mistake, Chao Guofeng had been extremely embarrassed, and the anger in his stomach had long disappeared. What was left was only a guilty conscience, especially when he saw his old friend of several hundred years, Zhang Mubai, being beaten up so badly by him. He felt even more ashamed. He wanted to say something, but couldn't say anything. The only thing he could do now was to apologize to his old friend, and at the same time, teach his great-grandson well. Even if he wasn't his ideal successor, he couldn't care less. Hearing Zhang Mubai's roar, he couldn't help but laugh bitterly, and said without any arrogance, "Brother Zhang, what are you talking about? I know that you are unhappy in your heart, and I'll apologize to you. Later, bring your great-grandson to me, and I'll definitely groom him well." Zhang Mubai leaped up in a rage, and appeared in front of Chao Guofeng in just 2 steps. He grabbed his clothes and slanted his head to the side as he said fiercely, "Pooey, you scoundrel, you dare to say that all of this wasn't set up by you? Pooey, I'm really blind to have been friends with people like you for hundreds of years. Now that your conspiracy has been exposed, do you think that it'll be over just by apologizing? You still want to take my great-grandson as your disciple? You're wrong. Do you think I would dare to hand my great-grandson over to you? Who asked you to train him into a lowly person?" His saliva sprayed all over Chao Guofeng's face, and Chao Guofeng wiped it off awkwardly and shouted in a low voice, "What nonsense are you talking about? Don't lose your dignity. As the Holy Emperor, you don't even care about your own face. I'm sincerely apologizing to you. You also said that your great-grandson's life is hanging by a thread, and now you're saying this. Dignity? Face. Jean Mubai roared in grief and indignation. My dignity has already been thrown into the latrine by you. My face has already been wiped by you. Chao Guofeng. Now that your conspiracy has been exposed, you want to use my great-grandson to threaten me? Let me tell you clearly, even if I really die without descendants, I don't need you to save me. Chao Guofeng, quickly hand over my disciple, and we'll mind our own business from now on. Otherwise, only one of us can leave here alive today. Chao Guofeng was stunned, and he stammered, What disciple? What did you say? Jean Mubai roared in rage. My disciple with the free and natural physique. Chao Guofeng, you really have good methods. You knew that I was going to fight with you, but you actually made the first move, swapping the beam with the pillar. Not only did you kill the second son of the Chun family, you even smashed his head with a single slap and shifted the blame to me. After that, you even came here to frame me, drawing everyone's attention away, but you actually hid your disciple in secret. Am I right? Chao Guofeng stared at him, dumbfounded. He really didn't expect this person to be so quick-witted, to be able to make something that didn't even have a shadow into something so logical, and even make a false accusation, framing him instead. Bastard! What nonsense are you spouting? Chao Guofeng was enraged. You and I have known each other for so many years. Am I that kind of person? F***ck off. We've known each other for so many years. Didn't this old man also know you for so many years before this? Am I that kind of person? Didn't you still humiliate this old man? Jean Mubai's eyes were red. Chao Guofeng, I was still feeling strange. That free and natural physique youth was staying at your place, surrounded by the 7 holy emperors, but he was still intercepted and killed. Let me ask you, in this world, who would have such mystical abilities? Ha ha, I'm really an idiot, he laughed mournfully. Who in this world would be able to capture a living person under the strict protection of the 7 holy emperors? I believe that even if the 9 serenities and 14 masters were here, they would definitely not be able to do so. Such an obvious flaw, and I actually didn't think of it, and even wanted to explain, but I didn't expect that this was all a good show that you, Chao Guofeng, had written and acted out yourself. All for the sake of dominating the geniuses. You all slandered me for being good at acting, but I say that the acting skills of the people from your Misty Mansion are really good. Chao Guofeng, if this old man still doesn't understand your motive, then it would really be a waste of my life. The moment Jean Mubai said this, the experts from the 3 holy lands all gave a meaningful "oh." This matter was very likely. Things were just as Jean Mubai had said. In this world, who would be able to capture a person under the strict protection of the 7 holy emperors? This was an inconceivable matter. This was an ironclad fact. Not to mention the 7 holy emperors, even if there was only one, as long as he disregarded his own life and put in all his effort to protect someone, that person would definitely be safe and sound before he died in battle. This was an expert from the holy emperor, and he was even being protected by the 7 holy emperors. If it was something that even the 9 serenities and 14 masters could not do, then no one else in this world would be able to do it. A bunch of nonsense. Making things up, inverting black and white, ridiculous to the extreme. Chao Guofeng was so angry that his entire body was trembling. Even his hair and beard were trembling. Right now, he could finally understand what Jean Mubai had felt earlier. Losing his disciple was already embarrassing enough, and now, this sh*t was actually thrown onto his head. Jean Mubai felt that his analysis was not wrong, and even more so, he was not willing to give up and continue to clamor. Everyone tried to persuade him, but there was a hidden meaning in their words. For example, Hai Wuya said, Brother Jean, this matter should be discussed at length. Brother Chao has always been an upright person. After a few days, he will think it through, and it won't be too late for you to discuss it then. However, Ji Qiu said, Brother Jean, this matter cannot be rushed. It's better to take things slowly, that you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.